Happy Sunday. It's Sunday show time. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Join me also. Eric, how are you, man?
Hey, Matt. I'm doing okay. I was recovering from a sinus infection, but other than that, I'm mostly out of it, but it's still kind of like kicking my butt here and there. But other than that, I've been really great, and I'm really excited for today. Looking forward to talking to some theists and having some good conversations. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. So if you're out there watching, and I'm one, my kind of curious question for today is, if you believe in a God, is your God testable? Is there any way to verify it? And does that matter to you? Does whether or not God is testable make a difference in, the strength of your conviction or what you're willing to accept? Because testability is kind of an important thing. We need to figure out how to tell the difference between what's most probably correct and what's probably incorrect. And if people have another way of looking at it, where no, this is fine, even if it's not testable, I'd love to know. We put a poll up in chat. A few hundred of you have already voted, despite the fact that the show's only been on for a few seconds. And 3% of you, which I think is about 7 or 8 people, have already said, yes, God exists, and I'm calling in to prove it. And yet there's not a single theistic call in the queue at all, which means when you say you're calling in to prove it, I hope you mean now and not like someday. I hope your promise to call in and demonstrate this is on much more firm footing than God's ability to answer prayers. Because we're kind of stuck. But I tell you, there's a bunch of stuff going on here online. We're going to get to calls here in just a couple seconds, and we'll take some atheist calls as well. But Eric and I are doing the Sunday show today, and then the Sunday show after dark, Eric's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are working him to pieces right now. It's awesome, but he gets to do a show tonight with Forrest Valkai, the Sunday show after dark. And Forrest is then going to do double duty. So it's me and Eric, and then Eric and Forrest on the Sunday show after dark, then Forrest and Justin on Skeptalk tomorrow at 6 p.m. And then we break things up because Alyssa and Taylor are going to do Chewed Gum. I'm going to do the Hang Up with Joe Von Bradley. And that's Wednesday night. And then Thursday, it's Luxander and Ben at 2 p.m. for the Transatlantic Call-In Show. There's calls and shows for almost everybody. And there was an episode of HOSTility the other night that if you haven't watched, you should all go watch. Good stuff. I haven't finished yet because I've been distracted by all the other crap that I allow to distract me. But yeah, so we're looking for theists as always. I'm not as interested in the bong rip theology stuff, but you know what? If that's the only theists that call in, if you're like, oh man, like the universe is God, or I think we live in a simulation, or consciousness is foundational. Yes, you, the dude from the other day who called in to do the consciousness is foundational. I suppose you can call in and talk about it as long as you're not going to engage in false dichotomies again, like last time. Because that's the only thing that tripped it up. Otherwise, I'd love to know if your belief about the universe, about consciousness being the foundation, if that's testable or falsifiable. If you had to, and Eric and I didn't discuss this, he doesn't know what I'm getting ready to hit him with, but if you found out that beliefs you held were untestable and yet you still felt convinced, what would be your process of addressing that? Like, I really feel this is so, but I have no way of testing it.
My view on that would be, okay, well, I would first look at, why isn't it testable? Is it testable? Is it falsifiable? What are the consequences of me holding this belief and also being wrong about it? If it's something like super mundane, like let's say I have a friend that I talk to that's in France and I'm never going to go to France, or I never will be there, and he says he has a dog. And I have no way to test that, no way to falsify it. But if I believe it, not a big deal. It doesn't shatter my worldview. It doesn't like completely make things collapse around me, my perception of everything that I know to be true. So pretty low stakes, and I don't mind. But if it's something big like a god or the supernatural or ghosts, or the monad from our caller from a couple weeks ago, I'm going to be much more cautious about how I approach that. And if I don't have justification to believe it, no matter how comforting it might be, no matter how much utility it might give me, I can't bring myself to believe that. Whether we can
once you recognize it, it just kind of evaporates. And Eric also brought up an interesting point, that there's a fundamental difference between whether something is testable in principle and testable necessarily by you in this particular moment. So, for example, whether or not Eric's friend in France has a dog is a testable claim. It's just that we're not going to pack up and fly over and go investigate, because the investment there is not worth the reward. Although, puppies are cute.
It's a trip to France, though. Anyway.
Yeah, you could do other things in France, like escape fascism, perhaps. We'll see.
Yeah.
If you're ready, we're starting to get calls, and
all right.
This one's a bit unusual from the typical calls, and something that I don't know if I fully grasp and have struggled with. So, Jonah in New York, pronouns are he, him. Jonah, hey, you're on with Eric and Matt. How are you, and what's going on?
I'll tell you briefly about, I haven't really heard this discussed in any kind of program, but I haven't heard them all. I grew up in a deeply religious household. My father was a minister. My mother was terrible. The whole 9 yards. Assembly of God. I either developed or was born with no internal dialogue. So throughout my whole childhood, now it's not an issue. I'm in my 40s now, but I had a really hard time, because by their parameters, I could never, ever be a Christian. And I knew it, because I could never talk to God. He would never talk to me. Obviously, there's no God. But in my child's mind, and in other people's minds, that sense, it was barred to me. I can't, even if there was a God to communicate with, I cannot. And I don't know of any apologists or any atheist programs, really, just because there's a minority of us that don't have this, have ever addressed that issue before.
Yeah,
I've had... Go ahead, Eric, because I don't know that I have any good thoughts on this at all.
Yeah, so Jonah, you say that you don't have an internal dialogue, so you don't know what it is like to have one. And I'm the opposite. I have an internal dialogue. I don't know what it's like to not have one. And I can see how that would kind of give you a different perspective on the God question, because a lot of Christians, a lot of religious folks, they claim that God, there's this internal stirring of the Holy Spirit. God speaks inside of you. And from my perspective, while I can imagine what that might be like, I can't ever test or verify whether it's actually a God talking to me, or whether it's me being delusional, me hallucinating because I had some bad mushrooms on pizza, or maybe just, I'm very exhausted and stressed, and, your brain starts doing weird things. I have no way to determine whether it's actually a God talking to me or not, while you have the inability to even experience such a thing. And while we're kind of different, I also kind of see of us as being kind of the same, because even if you had that, you wouldn't have any way to test it.
No, well, but my younger distress was mostly because I was a child. I didn't have those logical reasoning skills. At the time, I felt like I was just evil, which made life
can you say that?
a lot harder.
Can you say that? Can you say that one more time? Say that one more time, a little louder and clearer, because I missed it.
Yeah, you're a little hard to hear.
I thought I was just a bad kid. I was told that, if you pray to God and you give your life over to Him, you'd be a Christian. Where psychologically, I can't do that process. I can't convince myself that my own internal dialogue is God because I don't have that. The same way that I can't listen to my conscience. I technically have a conscience. All it is reasoning and understanding morality. But in the kid's sense, I don't have this conscience talking to me. It just doesn't exist.
I don't know.
So
okay, go ahead.
My conscience, I mean, like in the literal, like, voice talking to you. Like, I understand I have a conscience. I understand how you get to reasoning and morality and all that good stuff. I'm talking about a 7 or 8-year-old me, where when something's described this way, it for one, I don't know how you can justify a God who does this, but doesn't work for some people. But I also, I don't think a lot of people are aware that not everybody has these dialogues. So if you were talking about, the Holy Spirit can talk to somebody, well, apparently not everybody. There's not a whole lot of research into it, but they believe maybe around 70% of the population doesn't have an internal dialogue, or a very, very diminished one.
I'd be interested to see how many. I'd be interested to see how many of those people who lack an internal dialogue are actually religious and are actually Christian. That'd be an interesting statistic to look at. Anyway, continue. Go ahead.
That, and there's also many forms of Christianity. There are some Christians who don't believe that you talk directly to God. So it doesn't debunk all Christianity or anything, that far-fetched. But it does put a ripple in one of the more popular Christian beliefs.
I don't see that it does.
No?
So whether or not the various claims about internal monologues are true or testable, I don't really know. I've looked into it 2 or 3 times over the years because I've gone back and forth by various descriptions of to what extent I have an internal dialogue. And there's a couple different categories that people describe. I don't know that any of them are truly testable. I don't know how to get into anybody's head and say what is or isn't going on. This is a problem across the board, whether you say you're hungry, you're left-handed, you're cis, you're trans, you don't have an internal dialogue. We just, okay, cool. Let's talk about what that means. And so my understanding is that there's a couple different categories. One of them is like talking to yourself, like, oh, I kicked ass, and just saying it internally. And then perhaps yourself, it's just, I'm thinking a thought, I'm just not uttering it out loud. And then there's inner dialogues with different perspectives. Like I will have debates with myself, for lack of a better. I don't know, but I found these results on search. Evidently my Google device wanted to chime in. I will have debates with myself entirely in my head without speaking a word. It's just a process of, if I were to print out the kind of the dialogues going back, it's okay, what do you think someone would say about this? And then another part of my brain, or the same part of my brain, I have no way of telling it, which this is just the way we describe it, would come back with, oh, based on what I've seen and the data that I have, this is a possible answer, this is a possible answer, this is a possible answer. And then I have this back and forth with myself. Is that an internal dialogue? Because I'm not hearing any voices. I'm just sitting there thinking about things. And to me, I don't know how anybody could possibly function without the ability to think about things. This ties to a theory of mind where I just accept that there are other minds out there. And in that same way, I can take on what's, I think, called the intentional stance, which is to put myself in the shoes of that other mind to see how it would reply to me. Is this what you're talking about with an inner dialogue? Like you can't think about something and consider different perspectives?
It's like I say, it's different in different people. My mind is more visual than it is with words, and I just know what something was said. It's like one channel with no volume. So I can think, but all the times I'm alone, what I do is I talk out loud to myself. So I talk out loud while I'm thinking. I can do that, but I know what I'm saying, so it's not really the same. If there's a song, I can't remember what song it was, I'll picture myself in a room listening to a radio. I can't hear the song, but in my head, I can kind of figure out, like, oh, that's what it sounds like. Well, I have to have that visualization. I'm in a room looking at a radio. So if I were to talk to, again, a God, even though I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God, but just theoretically, hypothetically, I would have to stop, think about a God, like in the Holy Grail from Monty Python, in a room, and then decide what this God says to me.
No, that is operating
That's
under
what
the
my brain
assumption
works.
that is operating under the assumption that there's a God that is just a figment of you. If there's an external God that has the power to have communication with you, it doesn't matter whether you have normal internal dialogue or whether internal dialogue is normal or whether it's just self-talk or thinking. None of that has any impact on whether or not there's an all-powerful being that can communicate with you basically telepathically. That's completely different from an internal dialogue.
I've only ever experienced things that I willfully have in my brain. I've never heard any dialogue in my brain.
So once again, what I'm talking about isn't about what you've experienced. It's about you reaching the conclusion that because you don't have this experience of an internal dialogue, it somehow disproves a concept within Christianity, because I'm not aware of any concept in Christianity where God is just your internal dialogue. God is an external being that can communicate with you without words.
The version of Christianity I'm used to is God and Satan can both push on your brain and both send things to you like good or bad to do. I've never ever experienced any kind of outside influence at all. Everything.
Jonah.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what. Would you agree that whether or not you've experienced something has no bearing on whether or not that something is possible?
True.
Okay. So the fact that you've never experienced God or Satan talking to you, or perhaps any sort of internal dialogue at all, is completely irrelevant to whether or not there is a God or a Satan that could communicate with you if they wanted to.
True. I find it just a difficulty, not a that there's a God who hasn't a loving God, but it's only one flavor of Christianity, one argument. So you are right. There's ways around it.
Well, I'm not aware of any need to get around it. If there's a God that's all powerful, why would it matter whether or not you have a brain that functions like somebody else or not? That God, if it created you and is powerful, should be able to communicate with you.
True.
Yeah,
I guess my more dilemma.
I don't know enough about what different people mean about internal dialogue, and I have no way of knowing what you are or aren't experiencing. I'm only talking about what conclusions you can reach based on your experience. So, for example, I experienced things when I was a Christian that people around me would just say, oh, you're being filled with the Holy Spirit, or that's the Holy Spirit moving through you, elation, euphoria. I experience not like an angel devil on the shoulder or even in your head as a picture on the soldier on the shoulders level of conscience, but I certainly have a parade of thoughts where I'm evaluating things silently. And it's all still me as far as I can tell. I have no reason to think anything else is going on. I don't even know how someone could say they think if they're not able to do what seems to be happening to me all the time. Like, if you were to just stop talking and just kind of think the thought, I wonder what Matt's going to say next. Do you have any hope of coming up with an answer? And if so, doesn't that count as the internal dialogue? And if not, I don't know how anybody functions. I'm genuinely trying to understand the no internal dialogue, but it seems to me,
for me,
at least at a minimum, a completely separate issue from whether or not there's a God.
Yeah, for me, it's visual. I don't hear anything, but I know what you're saying. If I'm thinking about you, if I picture you in some nondescript bedroom or office or wherever on a mic. I go, okay, this guy's going to say this next. You know, I mean, it's something like that. So I have to visually see you. I have I can name the book. There's lots of movies. You know, Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs. They call it Mind Palace. So I'm able to visualize very, very strongly.
So
maybe I
I've
don't have
used
a
Mind
dialogue.
Palace
Maybe it
in
is.
order to memorize an entire deck of cards. That is a common visual thing where you like mine starts down at the mailbox down by the house with 3 images and then moves up to the end of the driveway and then moves to the top of the driveway and then the front porch and then we proceed and move through this house that I'm familiar with, putting certain images there, and that allows me to build up something where I can memorize an entire deck of cards. And by associating numbers and other things with it, cool, you can do amazing mental tricks with that. I don't know to what extent I'm able to visualize things, like when somebody says, ooh, close your eyes and think of an elephant. I can definitely think of an elephant, and to me, it doesn't feel like I see an element, but that I just internally model an elephant. But none of that has anything to do with whether or not, I mean, that's separate from an internal dialogue. And so when you say, if you were to close your eyes and just kind of imagine what is Matt going to say next, are you saying you have to picture me and then with no other thought or communication, the answer just comes?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's almost like, it's not subtitles, but in a sense, it's like subtitles. It's not like I have to stop and picture you. It's just the way my mind works, so it's instant. You know, like when I'm speaking, I can see myself in the third person speaking. And that's how I know I'm going to say, because I'm about to say something. And there is no subtitle, but in a sense, I get the information directly. I know, okay, I'm about to say this. I'm about to say this one. I'm about to say the word elephant. You know, things like that. Or I just go to the next logical word. You know, sometimes if I'm in the middle of a sentence, I don't have a conscious thought of my next word, but I don't think most people do. You kind of just flow into conversation.
So Jonah, if let's say you were to imagine you're talking to me and you ask me, what did I eat for breakfast? Would you visualize like what I ate for breakfast? Or can you like hear me saying I had this for breakfast?
A lot of times I visualize myself eating breakfast. Just, like, okay, there's food on the table, I'm eating it. So I think like, oh yeah, breakfast. What do you have for breakfast? And I see I'm on the table eating breakfast. I can't think of you, but a lot of times it's myself. Or there's no face. It's a thought. So it's not always like with great detail. Sometimes
so you can't think of
eating breakfast.
Sorry. So you can't think of me. You can't hear my voice, but you put yourself in my shoes and imagine what I did, but you're doing it.
I can, if I really, really, really focus, remember what your voice sounds like, but usually it's abstracted and I don't hear it. I just remember it. If that makes any sense. But it makes memory very difficult. But
yeah, because when I think of it,
think of a subject, I don't think of it.
Because when I think of it from my point of view, like, I've heard your voice now. I know you a little bit now. Once the call ends, I can imagine myself saying, hey, Jonah, what did you eat for breakfast? And I can imagine you eating breakfast. I can imagine you without the image saying, this is what I had for breakfast. And I can do both at the same time. So, yeah,
my
everybody's brains are
one channel.
Yeah. Everybody's brains are different, obviously. Even brains that are, typical and normal typical in development and in structure. Obviously, we can't compare minds, but I usually look at it as everyone's a little bit different, and some people are kind of more extreme and more outliers. And I like what you were saying earlier in that it doesn't disprove a God, but it does kind of, it raises questions with, hey, if we have a Christian God, a God that is supposed to stir your spirit, a God that's supposed to communicate with you in some internal way. And there are people out there who genuinely say to themselves, I lack this ability. It does raise the question, why does not this God compensate for that? Why does this not God just overcome the issue? Why does this God not just talk to you directly, in a way that you can actually physically hear? It does raise these questions, and these are questions that Christianity doesn't answer because they don't have answers for stuff like that. At least not satisfying
It's the
answers.
answer. It's a subgroup of Christianity in a sense. It's
Sure.
only if someone brings up an exact argument. I mean, there's so many different types of Christians, and I'm sure there's plenty, even I haven't really researched it, who don't believe God talks to you directly at all. I think maybe Catholics do that. They have a priest you talk to. I've never been Catholic, so I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
There's many Christians that wouldn't work at all. But for that, like Assembly of God, I don't know, maybe Baptist, Matt knows more about than I do. That is something that if they make these claims, I mean, for that particular claim, even though there's definitely a way around it for someone who knows what they're doing, it's a difficulty.
Yeah.
And I felt kind of interesting.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing about when it comes to religion and Christianity in general. It's that there are 3,000, 4,000 denominations, and then there are as many subversions of that as you have believers, because every believer is going to have a slightly different version, idea of what their God is like, what their God does, what the Bible says. So yeah, it's it doesn't get us anywhere in evaluating it. It just simply points out the fact that this God is not doing some things that it should be doing. Like if you're a unresistant, non-resistant non-believer, but you're like, hey, I want to know the truth. If the God is there, I want to know him or it or whatever, and that God simply does not speak to you, then it raises the questions why. If this God really wants to have a personal relationship with you, and here you're there and ready, you're just waiting for the evidence, and yet this God does not communicate with you in a way that you can understand and verify and sort out from hallucinations and from bad memories and from bad mushrooms on pizza, then yeah, why isn't this God not doing this? So
my big thing was it was affecting me before the age of reason. I mean, I was raised. I mean, this was affecting me when I was 5. You know what I mean? So it wasn't. I was unwilling. I was very willing, because when you're a little kid, whatever your parents tell you is true. So I had no disbelief at all in God. I thought God was
the same way.
Absolutely true. I was 5. My father was a minister, but I could not do it. And that is, I mean, a Christian can say, well, it's not true, or, I mean, you were this or you were that, but it's a fundamental roadblock to that form of Christianity is if the God is real, why couldn't he overcome this and talk to a 5-year-old?
Why on earth do you presume that God can't do that?
Well, he didn't. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
The fact that somebody didn't do something doesn't mean they can't. I could have hung up on this call way back when we found out, hey, we're not going to get anywhere on the God thing. I didn't. The notion of asking why God does or doesn't do something is a good question, and it challenges various claims that people have about gods. But the fact that any individual does not experience X tells you nothing about whether or not a God can cause someone to experience X, including the individual that hasn't experienced it.
Okay. I get that point.
I mean, it's all interesting psychologically to talk about, hey, who can create a mental image and who can't? Or is that even true? Or is it something that you could functionally learn? Is it a real physical difference between the brains? Given the barrier that we have to properly understand someone's internal thought processes beyond the description, I have no more access to whether or not it's required to have mental imagery or anything like that. But it seems like I don't know what process one could use to evaluate a claim and consider options, basically thinking rationally, without something, whether it is an imagery, an internal imagery, or an internal dialogue, or an internal narrative, or whatever. I don't understand how thought could work that way. And I'm not even saying it doesn't. But if we know that some people, or we're convinced that some people experience A and other people don't, that doesn't tell you anything at all about whether or not a God exists, whether or not a God can make them both experience the same thing, whether or not a God can overcome this.
I mean, there is different hypothesis, but I think that goes more into the left field of how that can be and how that can manifest. One of the big theories is everybody does have a internal dialogue, but nobody can hear it. So maybe when the thought pops into my head, it's because it was fed by an internal dialogue that's not part of my consciousness. There's so much in your brain that you're not conscious of. So maybe there's internal dialogue that's on mute. But
and so the time to believe something, though,
or
the time to believe something is not when we have a maybe or a could be or whatever else. The time to believe something is after there's evidence. And so unless, it's not a defeater for a God claim. If somebody says, my God can make the entire atmosphere of the earth vanish and keep all of us alive. Now, that seems to be, based on everything we know about physics and reality, an absurd claim. However, when they're making this proposition, not only is there no reason to believe that there is such a God who can do such a thing, but there's also no way to conclude that such a God doesn't exist. The knowledge and information you would need to have access to is beyond what we can experience and maybe beyond what is even knowable at all. And so I'm just cautioning people, including the person in chat who was a fucking time waster. I'm not saying there is a God who can do this. I'm saying if the claim is God can do this, the fact that it doesn't happen is not a defeater for that God. Because there's also other people that say it does happen for them. And maybe God has to gift somebody with it. Who knows? I don't know. But you don't get to claim that X is a defeater for the claim if the only thing it does is show that it hasn't happened on this day in this way under these circumstances. That's not what a defeater is logically.
No.
It's I guess more of a data point. I mean, the easiest defeat in my argument is God works in mysterious ways. And that would just show it anyways. So I'm aware you can defeat it.
Isn't that pretty much what I just said? I'm sorry that I used too many words. Yes.
I was paraphrasing.
But you're calling in.
I'm saying.
But you're calling in to say that your personal experience disproves a God claim, and no, it fucking doesn't.
I believe it's difficult for some God claims. I think.
Okay. I no longer care because you've gone from it defeats a God claim to you believe it's difficult for certain God claims. Cool.
I think I said that right in the beginning. You can look at the beginning of your show and you can see my call, and I said that right in the beginning. So you can pretend like I said it defeats all God claims.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that it defeats any God or makes it difficult for any God claim. The only God claim that it makes it difficult for is a God claim that claims God communicates with everyone all the time this way. And then if you don't experience that, that would be a defeater for that God. Just like saying there's a God that removes the atmosphere every day, all the time for everyone, and we live. That is defeated by the fact that the atmosphere exists. But outside of that really bizarre absolute, which is, by the way, circular, because when you map out that argument, it becomes every God that doesn't interact with me in the way that I experience cannot exist. That's where you're getting.
I think I slightly disagree, but I understand your point.
Well, then you're slightly wrong.
I might be. But either way, thanks a lot for your time, and have a good day.
Yep, you too.
All right, Jonah.
It's interesting. I don't know how other people's brains work.
Yeah,
or what their requirements are.
And it really does come down to how defined this God becomes. Because if there is a Christian religion, I'm sure there's one, and this Christian religion says God will communicate with you internally, and He is guaranteed to do so in a way that you cannot deny, and in a way that will happen before you die. The only way to falsify that is basically to never experience that and then die. And at that point, you're out of the picture. That God's falsified, but also the witness to that falsification is now gone. So, like, practically, that's like kind of removes it out of the falsification pool. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I might have missed that at the beginning. I didn't hear that Jonah was denying that God exists. I think he just simply said that that puts a wrench into the claim, I guess. I think is maybe what he said, but maybe I missed it.
I'm
But
pretty sure that
yeah.
there's a moment where he said, "Of course, God doesn't exist."
I think
And
he
I
did say
could be
that, but
wrong.
I think he did say that, but I don't think he was linking this experience or non-experience rather to supporting that. But I don't know. I wasn't paying 100% like perfect attention, but
Yeah, it's an
yeah.
interesting bit of looking into the psychology. I have no way of I have no way of investigating or testing it.
Yeah.
And it is, from what I've read, all of psychology is basically describing what people describe as their inner works, because we don't have access to it. And so the best we can do is say, ooh, are your behaviors consistent with what we would expect if what you were reporting is true? And it's if what I guess the problem that I had with the call is I don't know what value there is, because if there are people who have an internal dialogue and people who don't, and you're one of the people who don't, that doesn't in any way show that there's not a God who could overcome that. And so what conclusion can you reach? The only thing, it's like my answer to what would change your mind. And that is, I have no idea, but if there is a God, that God should know exactly what would change my mind and should be capable of changing my mind. And that hasn't happened, which means either that God doesn't exist or that God doesn't want me to know it exists yet. Those are the available options. And I have no way of figuring out which of those two is actually true. So it's God's problem to sort out. Until God changes that situation, I'm stuck. But
Yeah.
we got theist callers calling in to defend a number of different things. And so Josh is calling in from California, pronouns are he, him, says Christianity is testable compared to other religions. I'm curious, Josh, and I promise I'm not just derailing this right off the bat. I just don't want to forget this. Testability is not a relative thing. It's not like X is testable compared to some other religion. Something's either testable or it's not, right?
Yeah, I'm calling because, just to be quite upfront, I have to work with a presupposition that a God exists for my line of reasoning to be productive for this call.
Wait, so you want us to begin with some God exists, and then under that assumption, Christianity becomes testable?
No. I know that in your questioning, your main question for the video is, or for the podcast, is that whether God itself, a deity, is testable. And I just wanted to call in regarding a derivative of that subject of comparing
But Josh,
Christianity to other.
Josh, if the question is God testable, and you start with, we need to presuppose God, why would we need to presuppose something that's testable?
Well, because the again, to be upfront, the God question itself, I think is another major topic that I was more focused on the Christian element relative to. I was focused on the potential viability of Christianity relative to other major religions.
I'm happy to have that discussion, Josh, but that's not the question. If the question is God testable, and you call in to say, oh, I'd like to talk about that, but first we have to presuppose God, why would we need to presuppose something that's testable?
Yeah,
Is there a problem with
concept-
just saying? Is there a problem with just acknowledging that if X is testable, X need not be presupposed?
Well, I think that your logic is very sound. But it's also how should I put this? Testing for a deity itself requires a. That's perhaps one of the biggest extraordinary claims, and so
does that matter? Does how big a claim is or how extraordinary a claim is matter to whether or not it's testable? And if it's something's either testable or it's not. And if it's testable, then we should do the test and not waste time presupposing it. That's my position.
And there's also an issue, Josh, with presupposing the God exists before testing. Because if you presuppose that God exists and you're trying to establish that as a true fact, now you give yourself license to dismiss any test that doesn't confirm the God. Oh, maybe something's wrong with the test. Maybe God is sleeping today. Maybe God doesn't care. But he's still there because that's our presupposition. It feels like, and I don't want to assign motivation to this exercise you're doing, but it sounds like this is a way to disregard tests that don't confirm your God by having a presupposition in place to confirm your God already. It's unneeded, and I think it would basically influence your perception of the test results in a way that's not really seeking truth, but more to confirm the presupposition. But maybe I'm wrong about that.
I think no, you're not. You're not wrong, and I think I may have. I may have misspoke, and my framework came out incorrectly. What I'm trying to present is that right now there are I don't know hundreds, thousands of different religions, and trying to figure out if there is or is not a God, that in my opinion is a massive undertaking, and I was hoping to present a discussion where we can kind of eliminate some of these options on the table, and that's why I was making the claim about testability of option elimination, if you will.
I have a feeling that you don't worry about taking options off the table when dealing with any other supernatural entity, whether that be ghosts or vampires, fairies, gremlins, goblins, whatever. Why is it important to do this with a god rather with all those other, supernatural things?
Well, in just strictly speaking from my personal opinion, when you're talking about ghosts and gremlins, they don't. They don't have the same sociological impact as a belief in God, as in they don't have the same sociological impact of religious belief systems. It's one of the religion is one of the has been one of the.
I don't know why that's relevant. Yeah. Basically, for the notion of, for example, let's say ghosts, those things are tied to a number of different religious claims about spirit and soul, notions that I think are patently absurd and almost demonstrably false, but they're still part of the package of various different religious beliefs. Are you saying that because there are more people who believe more things about more religions, that changes something? Because if we're going to move past the testability thing, and we'll just say, okay, as far as we can tell, whatever God Josh is accepting, or all of the gods Josh wants to evaluate are all untestable. My normal reaction is, then let's not waste any fucking time. But now, I'm not saying we don't do that today. I want to continue the conversation. But normally, if somebody says, oh, let's compare gods and none of them are falsifiable, and then I would say all of them are equally useless to me. But if you're going to look at religious claims and say, oh, we need to consider these, what is it about religious claims that you want to give lenience to, I suppose, or view in a different light than the claim that we have a soul?
Okay, you've stumped me. I'm trying to let me
It's fine.
gain my footing here. Well, I place more emphasis on religious beliefs as opposed to, again, the ghosts and goblins thing. Because yes, while I do agree that the concept of spirits and souls undergird religious belief systems, there are you're talking, I believe, about a specific element of religion, but when you're talking about religion itself as a system, it has a sociological and generational impact, and therefore
yes, nobody's denying that religion has an impact. I just don't understand why the fact that religion has had an impact is relevant to how we go about evaluating whether or not it's testable and whether or not we have good reason to believe it's true. I spend a good amount of my entire life repeatedly dealing with this, specifically because I understand that it has a massive impact on society. Matter of fact, I'm just irritated that something so untestable, unfalsifiable, so confusing and esoteric does have such a massive impact on society. I find it to be an embarrassment to humanity, and yet you're looking at it as if, oh, this makes it a big enough deal that, hey, we need to consider it differently. And I'm just wondering, even if we were to grant that it needs to be viewed differently, in what way and why?
well, that relates to why I was calling, because when you look at most other non-Christian religions, they're the justification process is abstract and scalar, much like human societies. Human societies all over the world agree, generally speaking, as far as I'm aware, they agree that certain core principles, such as murder, is wrong.
No.
But when
So first of all, there isn't necessarily general agreement on any of this, but what you seem to be describing again is, let's see if we can and kind of backtrack a second, Josh.
Sure.
The God that you believe in personally, is it some version of a Christian God?
Yes, it is a Christian God.
Cool. Well, you realize there are a number of different versions of the Christian God, right? Every one of them thinks
Yes,
that they've got the right one. Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that your God's existence is a testable question for humans?
I believe that it's remotely testable.
Okay, let's shelve that for a second because I don't want to keep beating you up over the testability thing. So remotely testable. I want to know what that means later, maybe. But are you suggesting that despite the fact that there may not be sufficient reason to conclude that there is a God or which God exists, that we should still engage with the question to try to pick which one of the proposed gods we should accept? What's wrong with not accepting any of them?
I suppose if you were to look at the world, the universe in a purely naturalistic sense, then yes, there is nothing wrong to there's nothing wrong to say
Josh?
that maybe all.
Josh, do we have good reason? I think we all agree the natural world exists, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not convinced that anything supernatural exists. I'm open to it being demonstrated. Is the supernatural testable?
As far as I know, it's not testable, and the only
me too.
Okay.
That's where I'm kind of stuck. And so when I ask you, why do we have to pick? Why isn't it okay to just not accept any of the gods? And you can rewrite that to say, why is it not okay to just not accept any supernatural claims? And the issue here is, I'm not saying the claims are false, and I'm not even saying they're not supernatural. I'm saying there's no good reason to conclude that they are supernatural. And if my position is I'm not going to decide whether or not that's supernatural until there's good reason, and we're both in agreement that it's untestable, what is the good reason that you accept for the supernatural?
Well, the reason I believe in the supernatural is that I believe that there are remnants of evidence. It wouldn't hold up in terms of if you ran a statistical analysis. It wouldn't hold up, and that's what I meant by about like remote evidence. But I believe that there are.
What is a remnant? What is a remnant of evidence for the supernatural?
So a remnant of the supernatural is that when you look at various studies, such as like there was in August, I think August 2016, there was a Pew Research Center study that showed that religious people tended to be, I believe, more generous than non-religiously affiliated respondents.
Let's assume that a Pew study poll is accurate, and let's assume that for some reason religious people tend to be more generous. How is that a remnant of evidence for the supernatural?
Well, it's also I was going to say that it's a holistic concept, because it's not just about positive.
Josh, every time I ask you, I'm sitting here taking notes. I'm jotting down almost everything you've said. And I said, why should we accept any God? and you went to the supernatural. And I went to, why do you accept the supernatural? And you said, because there are remnants of evidence. And I asked for an example of remnants of evidence for the supernatural. And you changed that in your response to be a remnant of the supernatural, not a remnant of evidence. But you said remnant of supernatural is a Pew study showed religious people tended to be more generous. And my question is, how does a Pew study, even if it's completely accurate, how does that count as a remnant of evidence for the supernatural? Because I have no problem with the notion that people who buy into certain things, whether they are true or not, may be more generous, maybe less generous, maybe more moral, maybe less moral. That tells me nothing at all about whether or not the source of that difference is anything other than human psychology. How is it a remnant of evidence for the supernatural?
I believe that it's evidence of the supernatural because of the change in the character of the individual affected.
How is it change in the? This is the same God delivered me from alcoholism crap. How is a change in a person evidence that the source of the change is supernatural?
Well, that's where I'm hung up and where I use the term remnant, because I don't have.
You use the term remnant because you don't have any other language, because no such language exists for testability or evidence. When talking in epistemology, there's no field of remnants of evidence or remnants of the supernatural. You are just making shit up to describe the fact that you see a change in people based on their beliefs, and for a reason you can't explain, you think the supernatural is a likely, not just possible, but likely explanation for that. How did you determine that the supernatural is even a possible explanation for the change in someone's character?
Well, I examined. I mean, this would go back to the comparative point I alluded to earlier. But for instance, when you look at Christian or Christian inspired organizations such as the Salvation Army, Samaritan's Purse, etc. The
Salvation Army, by the way, is a bigoted organization that I wouldn't donate a penny to, but go ahead.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that, but my broader point was that when you look at institutional generosity, Habitat for Humanity is another.
Habitat for Humanity is not a Christian or religious organization, but however, let's assume that Habitat for Humanity was perfectly good and just went around doing good things, and they did it all on behalf of their belief that Jesus really wants them to house the unhoused. How is that, granting all of that, how is that in any way evidence for the supernatural? I'm tired of going in circles here, Josh, because all we keep asking is what's evidence for the supernatural, and then you keep coming up with, yeah, here's something that I think is supernatural. My question was, how did you conclude? Like when we see a phenomenon and we try to come up with an explanation for it, the first thing we need to do is make a list of candidate explanations. How did you determine that the supernatural is even a possible candidate explanation for a change in people's behavior?
Yeah, I didn't mean to, I don't intend at all to go in circles. I'm just trying to answer your questions as honestly as
I get
I
it.
can.
I'm just pointing out that we are going in circles. I'm not in any
Yeah.
way suggesting you're dishonest or anything. I get it. You've probably not faced questions like this directly, and I've done it a million times. So
Yeah.
for now, at the moment, I would say you're probably at an unfair advantage or disadvantage. But all I'm wondering is, would you agree that if we saw something, one of the first steps would be, after verifying that whatever we saw was not a hallucination or whatever, what is the cause of that observation? And then we list candidate explanations. If you're ever going to conclude that any observation is evidence for or a remnant of evidence for the supernatural, you have to first show why you consider the supernatural to be a possible explanation, candidate explanation, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So what did you do to determine that the supernatural is a possible candidate explanation for a change in people's behaviors associated with even if it was just the first Presbyterian church of Middletown, USA, even if that denomination was specifically having extraordinary results, how would you conclude that the supernatural is a possible explanation for that?
Well, when it comes to the personal change, I came to the conclusion not just based on the positive change, but also in the there have been studies that show that religious or spiritually affiliated people refrain from what are called higher risk or high risk behaviors, and so
okay, this is not even in the ballpark of an the question was, how did you determine that the supernatural is a candidate explanation? And you start saying you're going to go to studies that suggest, basically, when you compare this with a phenomenon or a group of people from one religion to a group of people with another religion, you see results that are different. How does it, that does not, I've already granted you, I've given up the entire fucking farm here, Josh, and said, okay, let's imagine a scenario in which the First Presbyterian Church of Middletown, USA is extraordinarily generous in the extreme, and an order of magnitude more generous and more moral than any other independent religious denomination on the planet. Now we want to know why. What reason do we have to conclude that the supernatural is a candidate explanation for why we've observed this extraordinary event?
Well, I'm really trying to. I'm. This is my honest answer, and so I hope it's not going in circles. But I think because of the magnitude issue, because when you look at other religions, they're also believing in. Yes.
Hey, Josh, so you're giving the same answer again, and that doesn't convince us. So let me try to reframe what Matt's asking you. Do you agree with us that people can change via purely natural means? You can go from being selfish to being generous just by purely natural means.
Yes. Yes. That
Okay.
is definitely possible.
Cool. So we agree on that. Matt and I
Yes.
think that all cases of people going from being selfish to more generous is explained by purely natural means. We don't see the supernatural in there at all. What can you show us? What can you bring to us to get me and Matt to at least consider the supernatural as a possibility? And again, hand waving at, wow, look at these big changes. I can't explain them. Look at this group over here. I can't explain this. That doesn't bring the supernatural to the table. It just means you can't explain it. So do you have anything that you can show us, demonstrate to us, argue with, that will bring the supernatural into the pool of consideration?
The reason I agree with that with your statement about natural causes creating positive changes, and what I'm saying is that if one religious system shows far greater magnitude than other systems, that is worth investigating the reason why.
Investigating is fine.
I granted all of that. I gave you a fictional church, one denomination, that has an order of magnitude difference over every other religious organization on the planet, where everybody on the planet agrees this particular organization is having results that are vastly different from what we would expect on the norm anywhere else. We would like to know why. Eric and I do not yet see any reason to include the supernatural as a possible explanation, let alone the likely or probable explanation. And all we're asking for the 10th time is, how did you determine that the supernatural is a possible likely explanation for that observed phenomenon?
I mean, I can only go back to what I said earlier about the.
Then we'll move on. Then we will move on,
okay.
Because we seem to be completely stuck here, where all I'm asking is for you to justify. If you walked in and said, hey, there's a dead body, let's list all the different ways this body could be dead. And you say one of them could be pixies. And I say, why on earth would you include pixies? I've seen no evidence for pixies. What is your justification for pixies? And you just start talking about the magnitude of the death. Okay, let's make it the worst death ever. What is your justification for saying magic is a likely explanation? And you have nothing. I mean, not even, it's just restate the same thing. I think that's something worth thinking about, to be like, okay, why did I consider that? Should I? Because if there's any possibility that you're wrong about the supernatural, then you need to be asking yourself, yeah, why am I considering that possible? Because I'm not saying it's impossible. Matt is not saying it's impossible. Matt is saying it has not been demonstrated to be possible. And until that happens, I don't get to include it in candidate explanations. Just like if my house catches fire, I don't get to include aliens as a possible explanation for why my house caught fire, even if there's really good, circumstantial evidence that there may be aliens. I don't think they visited Earth, but I also, until such time as they are demonstrated to be a candidate explanation for house fires, we don't get to. And if you submitted that to your insurance, they would laugh you out of the room. And so these are these big questions about whether or not there's a God and whether or not we should believe and how that's going to impact our societies. That's the reason I do this, because people like you, perfectly wonderful individuals who, for whatever reason that they can't describe, buy into something that I see no good reason to believe, completely fail every single time to give any explanation for why they're considering an option, and repeatedly fail when this has been pointed out, to make any attempt to correct it. It's now what most people end up doing when we're done with this call, unfortunately, and I hope you're not among them, is they go off and they try to find a justification for what they already believe, rather than wondering, if they have a view in search of evidence, or if they're looking at evidence in search of a view, because you seem to be doing this backwards.
Yeah, Josh, just to coattail on what Matt just said there, from what we can tell, you don't have a good reason to believe that the supernatural exists, because you can't argue for it, you can't show it to us. I get the impression you really want it to be true, probably because it's linked to your Christianity, and your Christianity gives you hope. I understand that. I've been there in my life. So you need to ask yourself, what is motivating me? My emotions, or an honest seeking of the truth and whether things can be rationally justified or not? And maybe think of it this way. Imagine, this might help you understand our position on it, or our point of view. Imagine you were discussing the supernatural with another Christian, and you both agree that the supernatural exists. Like you and I, we both agree the natural exists. Our contention is whether the supernatural exists. Imagine you're speaking to another Christian, and you both agree the supernatural exists, but the Christian you're talking to says, well, the supernatural needs an explanation, so I'm going to posit that a super duper natural exists, and that explains the supernatural. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on, that doesn't make sense. The supernatural doesn't need an explanation. But your interlocutor really believes in the super duper natural, and he might hand wave at something like, well, look how great God is. Look how amazing God is. That has an explanation. There's got to be some super duper natural explanation to explain my God. And I would imagine you would say the same thing that we're saying to you. Okay, what's your reason for introducing a super duper natural to the conversation? And imagine what your interlocutor would say, what it might bring to you. They might hand wave at a God. They might say, well, I just can't imagine it being otherwise. That doesn't convince you. The same way it doesn't convince us about the supernatural. So maybe think about that a little bit on your own.
Yeah.
How would such a conversation make you feel? And what would you expect out of your interlocutor? Because I'm pretty sure whatever you come up with is probably close to what we expect out of you.
Yeah, I gotta admit this conversation went a lot better in my head than it actually did in reality.
That's how most conversations
you have
go.
An internal monologue or dialogue.
Yeah, you know what? Probably the best thing I can do for myself and for your team is to just go back, review the footage, and then maybe call back again with a with a stronger framework.
Josh, you're probably my favorite caller of the last couple of weeks, because we still disagree, and yet we had a conversation where we asked questions. It was fine. We waited. We reached the spot where we're basically spinning our wheels, and rather than hanging up or throwing a fit or whatever by either of us, you're going to go off and think about it. And when you have something potentially new to present, you'll call us back. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, and before I go, I just wanted to say, actually, I really do appreciate you and the line, because I grew up in a very, very religious background. My high school was parochial high school, so I just been steeped with apologetics, and actually I didn't even know, Matt, what a presuppositional fallacy was until you kept mentioning it over and over and over again in your program. So in a roundabout way, you actually did change my life. That we're still not agreeing on certain things, but I definitely I've enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I look forward to talking to you again, Josh, one way or another. Because if I'm wrong, I'd like to know, is there a good reason to think that the supernatural is a candidate explanation? Our next caller that I'm going to go to says there is. And so let's see if maybe they can do what you weren't able to do.
Yep. Thank you,
Josh.
Sweet. Thanks, Josh. Yeah. I also want to mention that it's 3:15 right now. We're going to be doing this show right up until the 5 o'clock hour. So we've got about an hour and 45 minutes or so left. And then Jimmy is going to be doing a calling it now at at 5:00. I don't know who's on with Jimmy. Is it Jimmy by himself? Is there a guest I didn't see?
I think it's Jovan.
Jovan is on the 31st. It's blank on
Jovan's
on
the
the calendar.
31st.
Yeah.
Anyway, however it goes, this is the Line Network, and there's a bunch of shows here. Sunday is the Sunday show, which you're watching right now. There's also the Sunday show after dark. And between that, Jimmy's doing an episode of Call It Now. You don't have to go anywhere. Once we're done with the show at 5:00, it'll just automatically roll over and you can keep watching it there. Until we have a 24/7 rational, reasonable, humanist, good vibes network, we're just going to keep adding stuff. And we're going to keep working with as many people as we can to promote smaller channels, to get promotion from bigger channels, to work with the people like we do with Recovering from Religion, which I would recommend to Josh and everybody else, whether or not you think you're on your way out or whatever. Recovering from Religion is an opportunity to have conversations about your concerns and thoughts about your own religion, and perhaps even about things that you're struggling with related to religion. It's a great organization that we continually promote. I've been told Austin Archer's on today, so I'm going to assume that's correct. If not, you guys can go after Sarah. But in addition to recoveringfromreligion.org, which you can call them or you can just chat online, there's also the Secular Therapy Project, and that's at seculartherapy.org. That organization is one that I've promoted for many years and never made use of, or at least not really made use of. And now I am. Last Thursday, I had my first personal counseling therapy session with an individual that I found through the Secular Therapy Project. And I'll be continuing to work with them. We're working on a number of different things that I'm not going to go into here. And maybe we'll figure out just how weird I am or am not, and what is or isn't wrong with me, how I can get better at certain things. But the bigger thing is I made some mistakes. They have nothing to do with the show. These are mistakes in my personal life, some stuff hanging on, financial mistakes, things like that. And they caused stress and anxiety. And I'm now in the best personal relationship of my life. I'm in the best health physically that I've been in for 30 years, 25 years, apart from being older and all of the crap that comes with just being older. Like, I can't lift as much as I used to. I don't have the balance I used to. My memory is going to start fading. But generally speaking, I'm in a pretty good spot. And yet the world I'm surrounded by is crushingly anxiety inducing. Not just the fascism, the Christian nationalism. I'm talking about the complete abandonment of reason and evidence and good standards, about whether or not truth matters, whether or not we should care. That is a source of frustration for me. But when you add that to the other things that have been like simmering on a back burner, I've been like on edge for, I don't know, many years, since before I started doing the shows. And I need to find ways to get better at this. So far things are going out well. If I find out more, if I learn more about myself or anything else, I'll be sure and share it. But if you're struggling with things, by all means, feel free to investigate psychotherapy.org and recoveringfromreligion.org. Great organizations that I am continually proud to work with and to love and admire and count as friends, the people who run that organization. So I'm not remotely unbiased.
Yeah. What you mentioned reminds me of a concept called the 1% principle. And we have this too in technology. Like I do, DevOps engineering and some software development. The 1% principle is just continuous small iterations day after day. Don't, like, anybody who's out there trying to improve their life, get into better shape, find better mental health, find more security and peace in their lives. Don't worry about accomplishing it within a week or two or even a year. Just do continuous improvements, that 1% every day. and it adds up over time. And like you, Matt, I'm at a point. I'm at the best spot I've ever been in my entire life. And this didn't happen overnight. It was just a lot of work once I left religion, realizing, okay, I need to start making better decisions and start working towards something more positive, because my entire life I was told the world's going to end any day now. Don't worry about the future. Don't worry about your retirement, or don't worry about buying a home. You just preach, because Armageddon's going to hit any day now and all the bad people are going to go away. So once I dropped that false belief, I realized, hey, I need to start doing something. And just a little bit every day is all it takes, because before you know it, you're going to look back after a year or two, and you're going to look back and you're going to see how far you've come with just minimal effort every day. And yeah, it's never too late to start trying. Like you said, Matt, you're feeling the best now you have in 25 years. And I really appreciate that, because like throughout my 30s, I was in bad shape. I've got my health together. I'm going to the gym. I got, projects at the house that's keeping me like mentally stimulated, and it really helps. Just a little bit of improvement every day. So that's what I encourage everyone else to do. But if you Google the 1% principle, you can actually see like the very simple math behind it. Now, if you do nothing every day, you're not going to make any progress. But if you just give that 1%, it adds up and adds up and adds up, and pretty soon you have this massive number with the mathematics. It's pretty cool stuff.
Sorry, I'm actually responding to chat, and I mistimed how long it was going to take my old fumbly fingers to finish typing that. All right. So since we're talking about testability and everything else, Chris is calling from Europe. Chris, pronouns he, him, says he believes the spiritual realm with all the spirits, demons, angels, and gods exists in the sense that it impacts the physical reality and can be tested and investigated through naturalistic methods. This is incredible news, Chris, because it sounds very much like you have exactly what I've been hoping for. How are you today?
Hi, Matt. How are you? Hi, Eric. You are two of my favorite hosts, and I must apologize. First, English is not my first language, so I may stumble on my words a little, or be might be I'm not quite able to communicate clearly what I intend.
It's okay.
No worries.
We'll just be ready to be interrupted with a lot of questions, mostly for clarity. And so
yes,
when you say that the spiritual realm impacts reality in a testable way, do you have an example?
Yeah, well, may I first give a little background how I came to this belief?
Does it change whether or not you have a testable example? Here's the thing about backgrounds. They tend to do more biasing than clarification. Like, I don't want to bias my response to you because you're giving me background on what process you went to. Your claim's really simple, that there's a spiritual realm that impacts reality in a testable way. And all I need is an example, and then we can discuss how it's testable. What is the background?
All right. Well, that would a bit clarify the terms, how I mean the spiritual realm, what I mean with it. But we can just skip to an example, right? So there is a huge number of people in the United States that believe that Jesus is coming soon. So why should anybody give a shit about global warming? It's not a problem. Jesus is coming soon. So they vote, so they act, they consume, and the reality gets worse for everyone else.
How is this an example of spiritual realm doing something testable in reality? Because all that you described is people have a belief, their belief informs their actions, and their actions have consequences. I agree with all of those things. I agree with all of those things. I didn't hear anything remotely supernatural in that description.
And I don't think there is anything supernatural about the spiritual realm. I think the problem is that many theologians and many believers, they are confused, I suppose, about what actually is the spiritual realm, how it actually manifests in reality.
Chris.
I believe,
Okay, Chris.
yeah.
What is it says here in the call screen thing that you say the spiritual realm with spirits, demons, angels, and gods exist and impact reality in a testable way. If you're about to do a bait and switch where you say these are just mental constructs that exist, I'm going to be really irritated.
Not really. I would rather say that the spiritual realm,
So your example, hang on. So your example was that people believe Jesus is coming back, and this causes them not to care about global warming or climate change, and this is going to have consequence on people. Is that what your example was? Cool.
That
what
is
about
one
that?
example.
What about we don't need another one. I just wanted to make sure that was the example. What about that example is spiritual?
The Jesus and all the other things exist in this spiritual realm.
No, that is not spiritual. That is a cognitive position. That is someone's belief. Whether it's true or not that those things exist is independent from their conclusions about them. You said this was evidence for the spiritual realm, and you said the spiritual realm includes demons and angels. How does your example about people's beliefs about climate change act as evidence for the spiritual?
So I believe that the spiritual realm, it exists in the medium of cognition, of
I just
psychology,
fucking told
psychiatry.
you. I just stop talking, please.
And
I just stop talking, please. I'm gonna let Eric get in here because I just explained to you that if you turn this bullshit around to say that the spiritual realm is real in the sense that it is a cognitive thing, it was gonna make me mad. So rather than dealing with me getting mad, I'm going to see if maybe Eric can get you to do a better description of what you mean by spiritual realm, because if it sounds to me like you did the exact bait and switch that I just thought you were going to do.
Yeah, Chris, it sounds like basically you're saying that the supernatural doesn't exist. The spiritual realm is part of the natural. And what's in the spiritual realm basically is what can be imagined. That's what I gathered from that.
Not really. I think it's the other way around. The spiritual realm, it's like an emergent, broader term that people have been using historically to pull together the psychology, psychiatry, cognition, sociology, culture, all these things that people, when people believe they do stuff. Yeah.
I'm failing to see the difference here, because you're basically saying what can be imagined, what can be conceptualized resides in the spiritual realm, and I have no reason to believe that's actually the case. Like, is there something that we can imagine that is not in the spiritual realm?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I suppose it would depend on whether you act on it, whether you manifest in the actual reality, whether you synchronize it among other believers or non-believers.
All right, Chris, what I'm getting at is I'm trying to differentiate. I'm trying to figure out exactly what you're talking about, because you say that this thing can be tested and investigated through naturalistic methods, and I'm trying to fully grasp what exactly you're trying to describe, because so far, all you're basically telling us is that we can conceptualize things with our minds. And you're taking, and I agree, we can conceptualize things with our minds, but you're taking the additional leap and calling this a spiritual realm that exists in natural reality. And how do you go about testing such a thing? How do you go even about like establishing that such a thing exists, other than simply saying, well, we can imagine it, therefore must exist?
Give me a moment to think. Right. So Matt has mentioned a few times that when people are asked what they think about things, they give an answer, and a certain region in lights up in the MRI scan. When they're asked what other people think, a different region lights up. When they're asked what their God thinks about things, the same self region lights up again. So we can observe in the physical reality what the the spiritual beings think, in a sense.
You're describing something that we do see. How when a person's asked, okay, what's your opinion about something? What's your friend's opinion about something? And then what's God's opinion about something? We see different parts of the brain light up. We see that.
Yeah.
But you're again taking that natural thing and jumping to this points to something spiritual, a different realm. And again, why even take that step?
I think what I mean to say is that spiritual realm is like a misnomer. It's a term that people use when they conflate together things that we can investigate through other means, especially theologians and theologically inclined lay people. When believers, when they talk about spiritual experiences, those experiences can be tested and investigated through naturalistic means, through psychology, psychiatry.
Let me ask you this, Chris. How can we falsify such a thing? Are you familiar with falsification?
Yeah.
Okay. How can we falsify? Like, what's your falsification criterion for this super or spiritual realm? Like, if you were wrong about it, how would you determine that?
If we could show a case where there is something actually supernatural, if a phenomenon that someone reports as being a spiritual experience, if we see that it has no causal connection to physical reality, to his brain state or anything.
Yeah, how would establishing something supernatural eliminate the spiritual realm? I don't see it being logically impossible that the spiritual realm and the supernatural could exist at the same time. Why are those mutually exclusive?
I think that would not as much eliminate this. It would falsify my interpretation of this term, showing supernatural. Because what I mean with spiritual realm is that it's not supernatural. It's an umbrella term conflating several natural phenomena together.
So Chris, here's an issue here. Okay, you're kind of slipping around a little bit, and you're fudging your terms as we navigate through this. So I asked you what was a falsification criterion for the spiritual realm. You said, well, we have to establish that the supernatural exists, and then after I asked you about it, you then go on to say, well, it wouldn't eliminate the possibility. And then you go into what people perceive. So you're slipping and sliding everywhere here, and we're getting pretty much nowhere. From our position, from our perspective here, okay, you're making this claim. You aren't able to show it to us. You're unable to tell yourself that you're wrong about it if you were wrong about it. How is this anything but just wishful thinking?
I think the problem is that I have not been able to clearly communicate what I mean with spiritual realm. I could not give the background how I came to this conclusion. So I think that's the fact that I have not clearly established what I mean with the term. It seems that this term is fuzzy and ill-defined. But
I agree.
In my mind, I have a clear definition what it is and how it is not supernatural and how it can be falsified. Well, actually, I don't even think that it's like a layer of abstraction. Like we have hardware, we have copper and silicon and oxygen, and there's pathways, and there's transistors, and there's voltages and potentials, and there's electrons, and then we have YouTube and videos running on the hardware, and there are many layers in between. And I think there is something similar going on with the human mind, brain, the psychological phenomena, and the more higher level abstractions, like spiritual concepts, like God concepts, shared beliefs that make people act in certain ways, synchronize them.
So Chris, I understand these are your suspicions and your claims. I understand that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing though, okay? So you are right in that the physical world, we have physics and we have electrical theory and we have all this stuff in motion in order to allow me here in the United States to talk to you in Europe in real time. We have an understanding of every single step of the way because we as humans created that. We can show you anything from the computer to the network to the internet service provider to the undersea cables that are bringing these electrons to you, and everything in reverse gets to your computer. We understand these things. And you say, well, I have a suspicion that what we're seeing here in the natural world also applies to this hypothetical spiritual realm. But you can't show it. You can't falsify it. Again, wishful thinking. That's all I can say when I'm hearing this. Now, it could be that, yes, you need to better think out what you suspect exists, define it better, and then start asking yourself, how can I falsify this? Because I think that's the first step. Because if you can't falsify, if you have no way to determine whether you're wrong about it, then by definition, you can only find ways that you're right. And I can come up with all kinds of fanciful ideas that have no falsification associated with them, and I can go ahead and find ways to confirm them. For example, I have a tree in the backyard. I could say, well, I have a fairy living in the tree in the backyard. I have no way to falsify it, but I do know that if I put fruit out, the fruit the fairies will slowly eat the fruit over time, and the grass around the tree grows greener, and this is all confirmation that the fairy's in there. But you can understand how that doesn't work. Confirming such things like that doesn't get you anywhere because there's no way to know you're wrong about it. And the things that I see can be explained by other things. So, again, you need to sit down, figure out your terms, figure out how you would know you were wrong about this, and then go and test it. That's what we do in science, and that's what we do in everything else. And that's what actually gets us real results. The technology going from me to you to allow us to talk, that's all from science and development, testing, falsification, and then engineering. And it gets us something that we can use. But what you're describing gets us nothing. It's just wishful thinking.
I would disagree in one very particular aspect. The thing that can be useful about this is to view all the theological teachings in the sense that they talk about not supernatural beings and supernatural experiences, but purely psychological and intersocial experiences where people have beliefs, they have mental experiences, brain states, and they act in the physical world, impacting other people and their experiences and mental states, and that's all there is to it, and all the laws that God's commandments that gods have given to people, they are all actually human made things for human reasons, for human purposes, goals, to, in some cases, to stabilize societies, in other cases, maybe to take control over other humans.
So, Chris,
and there should not be anything supernatural about it.
I agree. We have nothing supernatural about it, but we're not talking about the supernatural here. You're talking about spiritual realms.
Yes.
And all the things that you describe, humans improving their lives, community coming out of churches and other religious groups, the utility behind it, that's all explained by natural means easily. So we have no reason to introduce, it's the same as our last caller, we have no reason to introduce this new idea to the pool of consideration until this thing can be demonstrated.
Yes, precisely. I agree. We should abolish the term spiritual. Nobody should ever use this term again until there is shown that anything supernatural exists.
Then why did
that was my whole point.
Then why did you fucking call in to say the spiritual realm with all the spirits, demons, angels, and gods exist?
Well, they impact reality.
No, that's not what I fucking asked you. I've sat here quietly, Chris. Answer the question I asked you. Why did you call in to say that there is a spiritual realm with spirits, demons, angels, and gods that exist? And then after the whole tap dance, now you think that the purpose of your call should be to get people to stop using the word spiritual. Do gods, demons, angels, do they fucking exist? Yes or no?
Can you define exist in this case?
No, but I can hang up on your time-wasting ass. You're the one who asserted they exist, and I specifically told you that if you say they only exist as mental constructs, that I would be pissed. Do fairies exist? Because I definitely think fairies exist as mental constructs, but they do not exist in reality. They do not exist in a detectable way. You seem to have done this long fucking tap dance of wasting all of our fucking time by saying these things really exist. They impact reality in a testable fucking way. And then we find out what you really mean is these things are only mental concepts, and those concepts impact reality in a testable way, which means we've spent 20 minutes doing a tap dance to get around to what I knew you were going to fucking say at the beginning. Do they exist? When you say they exist, do you mean that demons are actual independent entities that interact with reality apart from a mental concept? Yes or no?
Yes.
Then demonstrate that a demon exists not merely as a concept, but in a way that impacts reality. You have the floor. If you fail, you're gone.
All right, thanks. As I began sketching out my analogy earlier with the layers of abstraction in the physical digital computing, with we have hardware with all the...
I've now muted you, Chris. You are on the last fucking layer of the thinnest fucking ice before I hang up on you as a garbage time waster. You just said demons exist, not merely as concepts, but as independent agents that impact reality in a testable way. I want you now to give me the test that confirms that a demon exists and impacts reality. Failure to do so will have me move on.
Well, I don't think demons can exist without humans.
So when I'm going to mute you again, that's just to keep me from telling you to shut the fuck up till I'm done, because I don't like saying it and people don't like hearing it. If you think demons don't exist without humans, then why did you say yes when I asked you if demons existed as independent things separate from the concept?
I believe demons are
I'm sorry, Chris, why did you say that demons exist as independent things and now you're claiming they are contingent on humans?
I guess I misunderstood the question.
Okay. So do demons
the level
exist?
Of independence.
Do demons, angels, spirits, and gods exist in a detectable way, independent from human concepts?
independent from concepts, but not independent from human minds, I guess.
I am completely done. This is the most fucking dishonest bullshit I care to handle for one day.
Thanks for the call, Chris.
I'm sorry. Well, thanks for listening to me.
Thanks for nothing. Thanks for nothing. Say goodbye.
Sorry, Matt. Bye.
No, you're not. You're not fucking sorry. Because 20 minutes ago, I told you not to do this.
Yeah, you did.
Because if you want to have a discussion, a legitimate discussion about how people's conceptions of gods and demons and angels impact reality, that's possible. It's not really the purpose of this show, but it's something that could happen. And it's a good thing, because these beliefs that people have, like all beliefs, inform their actions, and their actions have consequences for themselves and others. But we just spent 20 minutes, or Eric just spent 20 minutes. I played a couple of games of chess. Eric just spent 20 minutes trying to get you to talk about the spiritual realm that you think is real. And yet it's contingent on humans, but it's not conceptual. But they're independent, but they're not. But they do this, but they don't. And it's us doing it in this. It is as charitably as possible. I'll write it off to the language barrier confusion that you suggested at the beginning, and forgive you and move on, because I'm a better person than I was 5 minutes ago.
I will call out Chris, though. I already called him out once, and then he did it more afterwards. Chris, you're being very slippery with your language and terminology. Like, once you make a statement, and it could be the language barriers Matt said, but we start zeroing in on something, and now all of a sudden the word doesn't quite mean what it was meaning earlier. Now it means something different. And you did the same thing with exist. You wanted to start making exist this fuzzy term. Later on, we also talked about whether something's independent or conceptual, and then you went ahead and just mixed those things up. You said it is independent of our conception, and it's really hard to get any good meaty conversation out of it when things are constantly changing. And it could be the language barrier, it could be you haven't really thought these things out, or it could be that you were trying to adjust on the fly in order to maintain the claim. And if you have to do that, then just totally back off on that and think about what you're trying to do and reevaluate it. You need your terms to be set in stone. Keep those terms set in stone the entire conversation, or else we're not going to get anywhere.
Sorry, I thought I found a gap.
No worries. No worries.
For our call screener, and huge thanks to our call screener producer and everybody involved in the show and our moderators and everything else. For the person Loki in chat who's decided that they're my therapist or that they know what I need, call in and say it live. Call in and speak to the entire viewing audience rather than just the chat, which is likely to go away when the episode's over, or shut your fucking pie hole. I am so sick of armchair quarterbacks. We had a great conversation with someone earlier where questions were answered. Nobody got hot. Then we had a dishonest conversation with someone who did the very thing I warned them not to do, where I sat here patiently waiting for anything of substance. And yet, because I expressed some irritation, somebody thinks I need a break. You know what I need? I need honesty. I need people who are going to sit there in the background and pretend that they have the remotest clue what it's like to do this or what's best for anybody, to either put up or shut up. Go make a show and do it. I think today's gone really well right up to that. But if you think that suggests that I need a break, call in and make your case. I will give you airtime, and it will go out and it will stay in the video so that everybody watching can figure out what it is that you think you know and understand better than I do about me and about how to do this. Bring it. But bring your fucking A game, because daddy ain't playing. Okay. Sam's calling from Florida, and just before we get to Sam, we are looking for theistic callers. We're having good conversations. We've got one that just got through screening, and we're going to get to right after Sam. But and it went away.
Yeah.
That's so disappointing. Well, they're calling back. They're calling back. The call dropped. It's frustrating watching calls show up and drop and get screened and everything else. But by all means, Sam's calling to say, why is gender identity legitimate when it is self-proclaimed but others are rejected? Hey, Sam, what others are rejected?
Well, I would like to start over. I don't think it was phrased the way I was phrasing it. I was trying to understand the whole trans thing. Why is
Understand the what?
identity?
Sam, are we on speaker? Are we on speaker? Because it's very hard to hear you. It's kind of echoey.
No.
No, you're in my headphones. I'll change it. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So, all right.
Better.
Back up. I can hear you a lot better now. What was the question?
I was trying to understand the gender identity debate. I was trying to wonder why is that a self-proclaimed thing rather than something other people claim for you.
Oh, that's easy. Do you have any way of verifying whether or not I'm left-handed or whether or not I'm an atheist?
I have a way of verifying if you're left-handed.
Do you? How?
By going ahead and watching how good you could use either hand.
Oh, but that doesn't tell you whether or not I'm left-handed. For example, there are people who are ambidextrous, and there are people who have been forced to stop writing with their left hand. So they may have your dominant eye and your dominant hand can be different. They can also link up. And so there's no way to tell whether or not someone's dominant-handed apart from, hey, they told me they were left-handed and I watched them and it seems consistent with that, right?
Okay.
And similarly, you can't tell whether or not I'm really an atheist, whether I really do not believe in a God. I might have a secret God belief. And so you have to just take my word for it, but you don't. You can disbelieve me. And so when it comes to gender identity, this is the exact same thing. What's happening is people are saying trans people aren't claiming to be cis. They're not making a statement about their gonads or their genes or anything else. They're saying that their identity, which is personal and inaccessible to everybody else, doesn't match the identity that people would try to assign to them under normative circumstances. And that's pretty much it. Yes, we can observe. So like not all trans people take any steps to transition. Some of them aren't fully aware of it. Some of them don't want to take steps to make changes to their expression or their appearance or their clothing or their name or their pronouns or any of that stuff. And yet they are still trans, but they're not expressing it anyway. And so we can look at people and say, okay, I'm willing to accept if you tell me that you're trans. I'm just willing to take you at your word. You could be lying, but I'm willing to take you at your word. And someone who's trans who doesn't do anything to transition is certainly in a slightly different category than someone who does take steps to transition. Like my partner she's just a woman and has been living her gender identity for longer than I've known her. That might be different in somebody's eyes than somebody who just says, oh yeah, I'm trans. Okay, now we might want to figure out whether or not, are you doing it as a bit? Are you doing it to make a jab? Are you lying or not? But we don't have the ability to tell if someone's lying about being an atheist or being trans or being cis, by the way. This is all this conversation keeps getting directed at the trans folks. I don't know how to tell if someone's cis. Do you?
Not really, but that still doesn't answer all the questions about the debate, though, because if the person isn't expressing that gender identity, well, then why do they want me, or why is it so important that I express their exact gender if they themselves aren't also trying to express it?
Nobody's asking you to do that, and it's not important. So, for example, I have two friends. We'll just go with Arden, my partner, and another trans friend who nobody knows is trans but me and about three other people. They're not doing anything at all. That person has no expectations. They're not asking you to use make any changes at all to anything. In the case of Arden, she'd mostly, I mean, she doesn't give a shit if you think she's a woman. Your opinion of her is completely irrelevant, but she has a name and she has preferred pronouns. And as a matter of just general respect and normative interaction, you can either refer to her under her name and pronouns that she prefers, or you can be an asshole. That's still your choice. But nobody's requiring you to do any of it. And she's not looking for anyone to give her special treatment or anything else. She just wants to be treated with the respect and dignity she deserves, instead of being what she has become. 1% of the population, or representative of 1% of the population, that is being held up as a boogeyman by right-wing fearmongers in order to allow fascists to take over the country, because they're lying about people transing kids and doing all this when they're the ones who are doing things to kids and hiding the people who are doing things to kids. There's nothing about the bathroom bills that do anything productive. There aren't trans people sneaking into bathrooms with their new gender identity to assault people. But if you changed all that, what you would have is violent, dishonest cis men acting as if they're trans, dressing up and play acting in order to hurt people. There's no solution for that, because that doesn't change. You can't change someone from lying, and you can't tell when they are lying. So trans people are mostly asking to be left alone, stop using them as a prop, try to treat them with respect and dignity. And if they tell you their fucking names and pronouns, use them, or they get to assume that you're an asshole, because you are. And I don't mean you specifically, Sam. I'm saying that's what the debate's about.
Oh, okay. I guess I just had a misunderstanding that it would be more of a requirement. And you said something multiple times, like a person wouldn't know. Like you asked me if I can know if a person's cis. And I guess I wouldn't also know if a person is trans. And
Correct.
I've only ever seen one. Well, I've only known one trans person in my life, and that person looks like a woman. So, I mean,
Well,
without any of the
how they
debate,
look is irrelevant, because there are trans men as well. And there are people who are trans who are non-binary. So, this is what I was saying is, you meet a person and maybe they appear masculine to you, maybe they appear feminine to you, maybe they're androgynous. Doesn't matter. We'll do three people: a masculine presenting person, an androgynous person, and a feminine presenting person. There's three people standing in front of you. How would you tell which ones are cis and which ones are trans?
when they tell me,
There you go. And that's the thing, is they can lie and they can do something that you wouldn't expect. Like that they could view, you could look at them and say, oh, you're not presenting this particular way, and yet you tell me that you're trans and you're cis or whatever. There's no way to prove either, but it's only trans people that are coming under attack. There's nobody running around saying, are you cis? And that's because the system is designed to favor and privilege one group over another, while using the other one as a prop to scare people into voting a certain way.
okay, I guess I still have some confusion, but I guess that's all the questions I have.
Well, I'd highly recommend, Sam, that you call in to the Transatlantic Call-In Show on Thursday afternoons, because instead of talking to a couple of cis dudes, you'd be able to talk to a couple of trans people who may be able to answer your other questions. They can definitely answer your questions better than we could. It's just that I get asked so often, there's some of it I can kind of address.
Well, I guess there's one way I guess I could form the question is when it comes down to other identities, like people mainly just move on. Like if a person were to wrongly call you a jock, a nerd, a liberal, a conservative, like after you corrected them, it just seems like something that you move on for if the person doesn't, call you the same thing that you're calling yourself. But like how I said,
So
I
are you
had a
saying,
perception that
are you saying that if they called me something and I corrected them, I just move on? Or are you saying they called me something, I corrected it, and they just move on?
like if I called you conservative and you disagreed, like I would think that normally you would just move on and just be like, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about." But it kind of seems like with
Yes.
the gender identity, it seems like it's a requirement that, you know, to change the other person's mind, and I don't understand that.
No, Sam, if you went around telling everybody else that I'm a conservative and that I'm really a conservative, I would denounce that every single time it came up. And at some point, you're going to piss me off because you're actively lying, and you're also misrepresenting what you do and don't know about me. And so generally, we would let these things go. And you know what? Trans people would let it go too. How much legislation has been introduced in the last decade to specifically limit the rights of people who are trans?
I've heard of some things.
Yeah, let me just use the technical term. It's a metric fuck ton of legislation. It's the number of bills introduced to specifically marginalize and further marginalize trans people is staggering, and dwarfs their representation of the population. What other portion of the population represents 1% or less of the population, and we have anywhere near that much attempted legislation? If you were trying to make it illegal for conservatives to vote, for conservatives to be out in public, and you started calling me a conservative, I would probably be more strong. But at the end of the day, I don't care about your opinion. But when they try, when the fascists who are taking over attempted to make it illegal for me to exercise my free speech, to criticize my government, that's only going to make me do it more. Their attempts to do that, to silence me and invalidate me as a matter of law, that's what I'll stand up against. I guarantee you there are no trans people going, you know what? Let's go fuck up Sam because he didn't use my pronouns. That's never happening.
Okay.
It's about the government.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking my call. I think I understand now.
Yeah, you bet. And by all means, if you come up with more questions, call into the Transatlantic Call-In Show on Thursday.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, bulk of it is just what's the
the
government?
political motivations behind it is what is really the aggravating factor. Because you can misrepresent people in all manners, in all manners of ways, all ways of manners. But like when it comes down to it, where if you're systematically the part of the political system is working to mislabel, demonize, and then use as a prop in political gain a group of people. That's the major aggravating factor there, and that's where, rightfully so, a lot of people will get very bent out of shape over that and push back, and that's what we're seeing. So
yeah, I've often gone to the left-handed, right-handed ambidextrous thing because it covers a little bit of a spectrum and touches on a number of issues. But the atheist thing is more relevant to me. Now, I'm an atheist, and the only way any of you know that is because I tell you. I could be lying. I could have been a closet Christian all these years. I could have a secret God belief. I might even have some God belief that I'm not consciously aware of. I don't know how that's possible because that's not how I view belief. But whatever the thing is, none of you have any access to whether or not I am sincere in expressing my atheism. And you know what? If you want to run around saying Matt's not a real atheist, Matt's not a real atheist, okay. 99% of the time, I don't care.
Yeah.
You're not doing anything to me. You're just showing that you not only don't understand that you can't have access to my mind, but you're willing to pretend like you do and you know it better than me. It is an embarrassing position to be in, and you look dumber doing it. And so that doesn't bother me. But when you run around suggesting that anyone who's claiming to be an atheist is not only a liar, but that those people are a danger to society, and that they're trying to destroy the world, and that they're trying to harm people's kids. Hang on. I want to make sure this comes out as calmly as possible. You can completely go fuck yourself, you garbage thinking piece of shit. Your fears about other people and what they're doing don't give you license to disparage them. There are reasons we have lawsuits about libel and slander and why it doesn't apply to things that are true and why truth is an actual defense to this. But we live in a world where fewer and fewer people seem to care about the truth and how to find it. It's a source of nearly constant frustration for me and for other rational individuals who care more about whether their beliefs are true than whether or not they're beneficial or make them feel good or comforting. And so I don't care if some individual out there wants to say Matt's not an atheist. Cool. You're telling on yourself, dude. That's what you're doing. But when you say atheists want to protect people who abuse children, I have to say that while there may be atheists out there who have done that and would do that, that's not a function of atheists or atheism. Just like it's not a function of the Catholic Church, despite the fact that they've done it a fuck ton of times. It's not a function of the government or the president or anybody else. It's not the entirety of what they do. And yet we know that they are guilty of a number of different things. And so when you prop up a marginalized group of individuals and lie about them to further marginalize them, whether it's the gay community, the trans community, the atheist community, the people who like foot pics community, I don't care what it is. If you're lying and disparaging them to make their life worse, you are the problem, not them. And so while I don't agree with or support or care about every possible marginalized community, individually, I care about the kind of world we live in as to whether or not we are making lives worse for people, all because some small-minded individuals are terrified of things that are different or that don't match up with their religion or that don't match up with the way they wish the world was. On that note, we got more callers, including theists. So are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Hakeem's a Muslim, pronouns are him, calling from, I guess, Alabama, and says, has proof of God, but you don't get to set the criteria. God sets it. Hey, Hakeem, what's going on?
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. Feeling good. Yep.
So what criteria did God set, and how can we be sure that that's true?
That's a good question. Well, the criteria is that. Hello?
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying that's my job.
Oh, okay. The criteria is that first he said, he lets us know, first of all, that he is of the unseen. We cannot see him. Okay.
How do you know that?
There is an unseen world that exists. That's how I know that.
How do you know that?
If an unseen world didn't exist, then I wouldn't take that.
So you're saying you know an unseen world exists because you believe it exists?
I know it exists.
How do you
know
a world
that we cannot see?
More
importantly,
Hakeem, how can Eric and I know that this unseen world exists?
Can you see time?
No.
But it exists, right?
No.
What?
Time is not an extant thing. Time is a label we put on the motion that we do observe. We don't see time. We see motion, and we infer and label time on behalf of it. But even if time existed, that doesn't make time God or supernatural. You said that God sets the criteria, and I said, what criteria did God set, and how can we know that it's true? And you have yet to give me criteria or any way to know that God said it.
I have to tell you that part because it's related to the criteria that he set.
I'm sorry, Hakeem. First of all, you broke up a little bit there.
Can I see him?
Your audio's breaking up. What is the criteria, and how do you know that God set that criteria?
The criteria is that he says he reveals himself. We cannot see him in intelligence, in nature, in the Quran.
I'm sorry, Hakeem. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to interrupt you for the reason you think. Your audio is breaking up.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Can you hear me
maybe
now?
you should have prayed. Maybe you should have prayed before you picked up
Huh?
the phone that God would make your voice clear. So,
Can you hear
well,
me now?
it's still going to break up a little bit. I just want to,
Yeah.
let's take this in small chunks because your phone's breaking up. How can I know that God set some criteria?
He says he reveals himself in nature, in man's intelligence,
Hakeem,
and in the
Hakeem.
yes.
Am I understanding you? Your phone's breaking up again. Am I understanding you correctly? When I asked, how can I know that God set criteria? Your answer is God said he reveals himself through nature. Was that your answer?
No, I said 3 of them.
No. I just asked you, how can I know that God set the criteria? And you said, I thought you said because he said he revealed himself in nature.
Yes, that was one of them.
No. Hakeem, that's not a criteria. That's an assertion. How can I know that God said he reveals himself in nature?
How can you know that? Because it's stated in the book that he claims that he is the author of.
No, Hakeem. How can I be confident that the book you're referencing was in fact directed by God?
Okay. God says in the book, the Holy Quran.
No, Hakeem.
Said you read.
No, Hakeem. What? You do not get to say God says in the book. The book says
in the
something.
book, in the book,
hang on.
in the book,
Hakeem,
the Quran, in the book, the Holy
Hakeem,
Quran tells man. Go ahead.
Hakeem, listen.
Go ahead. I'm listening. Go ahead.
I know what the Bible says. I know what the Quran says. I don't give a fuck what either of them say, and will not until you demonstrate. It's not fine. Please stop interrupting me. I'm asking you, if God said something, how can I be confident that God said something? You look at a book and you say, God said this. And I look at a book and I say, the book claims God said this. How can I tell that God actually said it?
Ask me, how can God say something in a book? Is that what you're asking me?
Okay, I'm going to try this one last time, and I'm going to let Eric take over because I'm fucking this up. So here's the thing.
All right.
Which book are you referring to, just for shorthand? The Bible, the Quran, what?
The Quran.
Okay, so you say the Quran, of course, as if that's supposed to be fucking obvious. The Quran promotes a pederast as God's representative, and that doesn't make sense to me. But here's the issue.
Okay, that's you.
Okay. If the Quran says that Allah has set the criteria, how can I be sure that what the Quran says about God setting the criteria is true? That's my last question for you.
The criteria that he set in the Quran, he tells.
No, sir. No, sir, Hakeem.
If you have doubt.
Hakeem, I did not ask what the fucking book said. I did not ask what the criteria was. I said,
so
please listen. Please. I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you because you're garbage at listening. So pay very close attention. This is my passport. On this passport, it says, it has listed a policy of the government. And so I can say this policy in this book was handed down by the government. And somebody could say, how do you know that? And so I would say, we would have to go look up the Constitution and the process by which this particular piece was ratified as a law within the United States of America. That is how I can be confident that this passport is actually government issued. Now, there are other checks and balances in here as well, including the anti-fraud stuff, but these things get faked. at the end of the day, I'm asking you, I know what the fuck the Quran says. I know what the fuck the Bible says. I know what the fucking number of different holy books say. You're saying the Quran is God claiming what the criteria is. That's like saying my passport is the government claiming I'm a citizen. When I ask you, how can I verify that the government is saying I'm a citizen on this document? You cannot answer by saying the document says so. And so when I say, how can I verify that God listed criteria in the Quran? You cannot reply because the Quran says so. You have to give a justification for that. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, we will never be able to carry on a conversation further. So how can I verify that God dictated the criteria in the Quran?
I heard everything you said clearly. As soon as you unmuted me, it started breaking up again. Can you hear me clearly now?
No, you're still breaking up, but I'd just like you to answer the fucking question.
Wow.
Wow.
Your whole heard with no break, but you can't hear me without it breaking up.
I mean, Hakeem,
not my
you can
fault.
listen.
It's your
Hakeem,
cell phone service.
If you don't believe us, just go back in the video and listen. You'll hear what we're hearing.
Am I going to let you speak? I don't know. Are you going to speak or squeak? Tell me how I can know that God gave the criteria in the Quran. Last fucking chance.
I have to test that book that makes the claim that it's from God. I have to put the book to the test. Just like you have to put it from the government, check that out.
So angry.
Yes.
You have to check it out.
So what's the test that I've been asking you for over and over again? What's the test?
Yes, the test for me.
No, it's not for you. It's not for you. There's not a test for you.
If I'm the one,
no, it's not. I'm sorry that you're so hopelessly confused. I'd like to help you. But here's the thing. The passport isn't true just for me. It's not a test just for me. There's a test where anybody can verify what my passport says and what the legal bindings are. Can you present anything remotely like that for
You're
God?
comparing God to a damn passport, man. Are you out of your damn mind?
Yes, I'm completely out of my mind because I'm talking about standards of evidence. I'm talking about standards of evidence, and you don't know how to think your way out of the box that you fucking shoehorned yourself into. So I'm sorry that you don't understand analogies or evidence, but I'm not merely talking about a piece of paper. I'm talking about how we verify that a claim is true. Any claim. It's not just a claim for you. It's not just a claim for me. There's not a special way to verify it for me or a special way to verify it for you. Oh, you ran away. After yelling and screaming about how I'm losing my mind because I compared God to a piece of paper, I'm sorry that you don't understand analogies. That must be very difficult for you.
Very fragile. Hakeem did say one thing. I'm assuming I heard him correctly. He said testing it. And I was like, that's a good first step. We have a claim. Let's test it. And we couldn't get to, okay, what's the test? And Hakeem, maybe if you want to try again, maybe get a better connection. Yeah, I know. I know he left, but call back in on another show. Hopefully your connection's better. Stay a little calmer because we're asking perfectly reasonable questions. Don't get all bent out of shape because Matt used an analogy about a passport to talk about what to do with the Quran. That's not comparing. That's just drawing. That's just drawing. Well, it is comparing, but it's trying to paint a picture so that we can understand the argument or the conversation. But what is the test? Call back in and let us know. And another question, once you have a test, if that test fails, what does that tell you? The crash out was funny though. I enjoyed that.
You're comparing God to a damn book. Have you lost your mind? Evidently, because I understand what an analogy is, and that every time I said, yes, I know what the book says, how can I know that it came from God? The answer was, in the book, he says this, and I got to put the book to the test. Yes, I know what the book says. It's like,
And he's incorrect about that. He got very bent out of shape and he wasn't thinking clearly. Matt wasn't comparing your God to a book. He was comparing your book to another book.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
True.
They're both books. Yeah. So,
yes.
Yeah. What's the test and how would you know? What would it tell you if that test failed? Would you move the goalpost? Would you come up with a different test? What would be the result of that? Think about it.
Yeah.
If you care.
Eric's last framing of that is critical, because if
now Matt's having technical issues, or am I? Nope, Matt's frozen. Okay, I guess it's my show now, folks. Hey, Matt, you're back.
Okay.
Hey, all right. You froze for a second there.
Well, at least the audio issues from the caller weren't on my part. All right.
No.
Wow, really?
I think Matt's catching up. Yeah.
Yitz is calling from Pennsylvania to talk about Israel's reestablishment and including the existence of God. Can we start with the existence of God?
Hello, can everyone hear me by chance? Can you hear me?
No, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Cool.
All right.
Can we start with the existence of God?
Israel ties into that. So I will start off.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Well, if I can explain.
A God either exists or doesn't exist, independent of whether Israel exists or what Israel's doing. Israel is a nation state.
Well, Matt, my argument is that you could use the reestablishment of Israel to lend credence to God's existence. I don't believe one should prove God.
No, you can't. No, you can't, Yitz. No, you can't. You can use the reestablishment of Israel to some extent to show that people strongly believed that there is a God that wanted Israel as an establishment, but that is not evidence that the God exists.
Oh, all right, that's fair. Wait,
did you just say that's fair?
What I wanted to say. Yes, yeah.
Do you have a case? Do you have a case for the existence of God then? Okay. Then let's do that.
Okay, yes. So I'll start with this. Excuse me. So it says in the Torah that if we were wicked, we would be vomited from the land. We would be removed.
I'm sorry, Yitz.
We would be spread throughout.
I'm sorry, Yitz. I thought you were presenting a case for the existence of God. There is nothing in the Torah. No, you're not. There's nothing in the Torah or any other book that is evidence for the existence of a God.
Well, Matt, if I can have 10 seconds, please, I would, and then you can let me go.
I'm sorry, you've been on for 2 minutes and 10 seconds, and okay, here, 10 seconds, go.
Okay, thank you. So we were removed from the land, and the Torah said that the Son would bring us back. And indeed, that has happened. The prophecies were being fulfilled. We have been regathered to Israel. The Dead Sea is becoming flesh. Our enemies,
that's
like
10 seconds.
For example,
that's 10 seconds. That's 10 seconds. That's 10 seconds. That's 10 seconds.
All right.
That's 10 seconds.
Okay.
Listen.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
If I stop talking and if I want a medium rare steak and I order a medium rare steak and the waiter brings me a medium rare steak, did the waiter and the chef fulfill prophecy?
It's a promise from God. And
no.
You believe it or you don't believe it.
Yitz, please don't go down the dishonest as fuck route, because I don't think I can take it. Listen to me very, 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 very carefully before you say anything else. One, you don't get to say it's a promise from God if the point is to demonstrate that God exists. That is a false presumption That is a circular argument. You don't get to claim there's a promise from God until you demonstrate that there's a God and that there's a promise for that. But that has nothing to do with what I asked you. I asked you, if I order a medium rare steak and it shows up medium rare, did the waiter and the chef fulfill prophecy, yes or no?
Well, I don't believe one could demonstrate God's existence, but in your analogy, I suppose you could say they fulfilled your...
Yitz. When I say yes or no, I mean yes or no. That was a yes or no question. Did the waiter and the chef fulfill prophecy? And you're saying, well, I don't know if there's anything about prophecy, but they fulfilled your order. So since you seem to be just as immune to analogies as the last caller, I'm going to ask you a different question. Does the fact that something is stated in a book and later seems to come true in any way demonstrate whether or not the book magically predicted that event? Yes or no?
As a believing Jew, I would say yes. I presume others
So
would say
you
no.
think as a believing Jew that epistemology gets to get thrown out the window, and if a book says something and it appears to come true later, that means that the book knew in advance, or the author of the book knew in advance?
I would say yes.
Okay, that's
Can I
stupid
ask
as
a
fuck.
question, Matt?
That's stupid
Can I
as
ask you a
fuck.
question, Luke?
That is stupid
All
as
right.
fuck.
Can I ask...
No, you don't get
Can I
to ask
please
me a
ask you-
question because
Okay.
you think that you have special criteria as a believing Jew. Do you realize there are other books that make predictions that seem to come
There have
true?
been no other people. No other people have
I'm
gone to the
sorry.
land
I'm
after
sorry, you
2,000 years of
dishonest
exile.
caller. I'm asking a question. Are you aware there are other books that make claims that appear
Yes.
to come true? Yes or no?
Yes, although their prophecies have not come true.
No,
As you
I
just
didn't
foretold.
ask you. Okay, you are dishonest. I'm going to mute you. And then after I'm done saying my piece, I'm going to bow out again and see if maybe Eric can rehabilitate this. I'm sorry to keep doing it this way.
You're fine.
I didn't say a fucking word about prophecy, Yitz. You don't get to call it prophecy in order to poison the well while you're trying to demonstrate that it's prophecy. Here's 5 books. They make 5 predictions. They make 5 claims about what should, could, or might happen in the future. If 4 of those 5 seem to come true, you now have to demonstrate that those 4 books, that the source of those books knew that those things were going to come true, because that is prophecy and prophecy being fulfilled, rather than it's the case that those 4 books' claims were public knowledge and people who wanted to make it appear as if prophecy was fulfilled actively worked to make those things happen. If you don't have a method to tell the difference between here's a publicly available claim that people are working to bring to fruition and here's an actual prediction that could only have been known to the God of the universe, you have no grounds for anything. And the book itself is just a list of claims. And epistemology doesn't change whether or not you're a practicing Jew or not. Something is reasonable or not based on argument and evidence and the foundations of logic. Your Judaism is fucking irrelevant to all of it. And so is the Torah, the Tanakh, the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, or any other book where somebody sees a claim that they think came true. It may have. How did you rule out time travel? How did you rule out luck? How did you rule out people working to actively make that happen? None of those things are something that I think you can resolve. But you're definitely not going to resolve it by claiming you're a Jew or claiming it came from God when the very thing you're trying to demonstrate is that the God of the Jews did this. I don't think you can demonstrate that, but I'm willing to have you try. Did what I say make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
Eric on the line by chance?
Yeah, I'm right here, and I'm in alignment with Matt on that. For me, a prophecy is immediately disqualified as being as such if people read it and then actively try to make it happen. Like once that happens, it's no longer a prophecy. You're done. So I have a hard line on it.
Oh, yes. So my quick counter would be that the early Zionists, Theodor Herzl, David Ben-Gurion, they were all secularists. They did not believe in Tanakh or anything.
So,
and also, I would say that
are we talking about the reestablishment of Israel in 1940 and not their original restoration from the Babylonians? Okay. So that was such a complex...
the new one. That is what I am talking about. I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding.
No worries. I'm just clarifying. But you just simply said, you just hand waved and said, well, these folks met this criteria that you find important. But here's the thing, though. In 1940, the reestablishment of Israel was such a complex political process involving thousands of people. You can't possibly make any general declarations about them. There were people in that group who read the Torah and who read the supposed prophecies, and then they worked to make it happen. And to me, that disqualifies it as a prophecy. It was just motivated people who believed in the religion, made something they thought the religion wanted to happen. Nothing supernatural, nothing godlike there. It's completely mundane.
It's possible.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that admission. So now how do we go about determining whether it was just humans doing what humans do or whether there was something supernatural behind it?
Oh, yes. I would say that it was very unlikely, not just the military victory. Israel fought against 7 Arab armies that didn't have any weapons of any kind, no planes, no tanks. But throughout 2,000 years, 1,900 years of exile, we were persecuted. We faced blood libels, forced conversions. Jews were not able to walk out of the synagogue.
I'm asking. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was supposed to be quiet.
It's okay.
I'm muted.
Yitz, I know that's all very impressive, but we're talking about prophecy, right? So people knew about the prophecy, people believed in the prophecy, and then they went out and actively made it happen. So how do you differ? Okay, I know. We're back to where we just, back to my last question. How do you determine whether it was just humans doing what humans do, or there was actually some supernatural element behind it, like a god or whatever? How do you go about determining that?
Yes, 2 things. Number one, it is very unlikely. You could try to name
how do you know the likelihood?
People.
I'm sorry, Yitz. How do you know the likelihood? How do you know the likelihood behind it?
Well, based on the persecution we suffered, we lost 1/3, 1 out of every 3 Jew in the Holocaust. We should not even exist as a people right now. So how does that at all
contribute? How does that all contribute to the likelihood that a God was behind it? I know you're impressed by it, and I'm not trying to downplay. I'm not trying to downplay the horrors that your people went through. But how does that all follow that a God was behind it?
Well, there's been plenty of other ancient peoples. Let's take the Canaanites, for example. They're no longer here. The Babylonians are no longer here. Ancient Romans. Plenty of ancient people have been destroyed. They've been, as Mark Twain said, they went to the dustbin of history. But yet we Jews are still around and we're actually thriving pretty successfully. I would say one more counter-argument, please, and that is the Dead Sea. It says in Ezekiel that the Dead Sea will become fresh. And indeed, as the Dead Sea continues to recede, pockets of fresh water, those sinkholes, and fresh water bubbles up to the surface. That sounds very unlikely that such a thing would happen, especially when Israel has been reestablished, and also says, it says that the land will bloom, and it's blooming today. When the Arabs were in charge, they deforested 75% of the trees. So the land is blooming, and the Dead Sea.
So that's humans doing what humans do. I still don't see any link between what you're explaining. I don't see any link between what you're claiming happened versus an actual God was behind it.
Well, where the Dead Sea is completely natural. Nobody knew there was fresh water underneath until it happened.
Sorry, what? Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't understand what you're saying there.
The fresh water that is rising outside the perimeter of the Dead Sea, nobody knew that would happen. And yet that's
fresh water,
exactly what it says. And so now,
the earth is changed. Oh, hold on. The earth has a ton of water in it. Like here's the thing, okay? Like the Vedas and the Mahabharata and other Hindu texts, right? They predict decline of morality, the rise of greed. They predict, I think, other natural events, and they've seen those things happen. But you don't believe in the Hindu gods, do you?
Well, I believe there are multiple paths to God. I would just say that those
You're believing in
traditions
multiple
sound
gods
vague.
now?
Oh no,
Hold on.
I'm saying I respect other traditions. I believe there are multiple paths. Every religion can lead to God. Is what I'm trying to say. Christian, Muslim, Hindu. I'm not exclusive.
Okay, so but here's
in
the
my
thing. All right, here's the thing. You haven't established yet that there's any linking to an actual God, and now you're saying, well, and when competing prophecies are brought to the table from competing religions, you're just saying, no, I'm just going to own all that, and that's my God working through these other religions. And again, that doesn't link it
I'm
to any
sorry.
God. These are claims.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was not presenting that case. What I would say is that the argument of from the Hindus, for example, that human hearts will become corrupt, become greed, that is a vague prophecy. But the prophecy of us returning
I think
to
water
the
rising is a
Israel-
vague. Yitz, I think water rising is a vague prophecy. Water rises and declines all the time. So I think that's a vague prophecy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alex, can I ask your opinion on this? It said that would only happen once we came home. So what would be the odds that
I think water rises and fall. I think water rises and declines all the time, all over the world. And when a nation is established, it's inevitable that water is going to either rise or decline at some point after that. Mundane. I think probably what happened was whoever wrote that, taking it at face value, I think whoever wrote that witnessed those things happening and say, hey, you know what? I think it's going to happen again. And they wrote it down.
Possible?
It is possible. And that gets back to, and for the third time, that gets back to the original question. If it's possible without a God, and you're saying it definitely involved a God, how can you tell the difference? Because I have no way to tell the difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, to be fair to myself,
I would say, if I had to bet money, I look at plausibility, right? If I had to bet my money on whether it was a natural occurrence or a supernatural entity was actually behind it, I'm always going to bet on the natural, because I have natural explanations for virtually everything that I've ever seen. And I have zero explanations from the supernatural. You can't even demonstrate to me that the supernatural exists, and you want me to consider it as an option.
It's an option. I said from the start that this does not prove God 100%. If such a thing were a case, you would not be identifying as atheist today.
Okay, great. So we agree in that. So now, how can you prove to me a God exists?
Well, I can't. I will be honest. I can't do
okay.
I can.
And that's
with prophecy, with near-death experience, but that's as much as I can do. I'm not like the previous fellow.
I'm not saying you are, but what I'm trying to tell you is that if you can't show us that this thing actually exists, then we're not going to get anywhere, because you can hand wave at coincidences, you can hand wave at perceived fulfilled prophecies, you can do all that kind of stuff, and that's not going to get you anywhere, because I have explanations for all those things. Plausible, natural, common, mundane. I'm not going to jump to something special until you can demonstrate to me that that special thing actually exists.
And this is why I am saying you're exactly like the last caller, because in both cases, we are asking for what is the justification that allows you to conclude that a God is possible, and then is the likely explanation for what you perceive. And just like the previous callers, you have absolutely nothing apart from you find it extraordinary, and you think you find it specific, but whether or not you find it extraordinary is irrelevant, and whether or not it is extraordinary is irrelevant to whether or not the explanation is a God. You have no demonstration that a God is possible or likely. And the passage in Ezekiel 47 that you're referencing is not the specific claim of prophecy that you're talking about. It is only in hindsight when people go back and read that and say, oh, that looks a lot like this. It is exactly what you would expect from the pattern recognition machines that are human, who think that they're part of God's special fucking chosen tribe.
Well, Matt, I would say that we were chosen not because we were special, but because we were actually the least of all nations. Our mission is to be a
Yes, you keep telling yourself that God chose you because you're the least, because that makes you seem like you're fucking humble instead of arrogant. Why won't God choose other people who were more deserving, huh?
Well,
I'm using your
we
model.
believe.
I don't think anybody's more deserving. You're saying you were the least deserving, essentially, and God picked you. And I'm like, why doesn't God pick other people too?
Well, he has. We do not believe, for example,
How
that
do you know
anyone. We do not believe that everyone goes to hell. We believe that you can be a Jew, you can be an atheist, you can be a Christian, and if you were a decent human being, you can own your place. But we do not believe that we are special in that sense. No, we do not believe that. We believe that we were chosen for a mission to help spread light and morality to the world. That's what we believe in.
I froze again. I'm back. You just
No
made the
worries.
assumption God picked other people, and I'm wondering, who did God pick, and how do you know that?
Well, it says in the Bible, for example, that God loved.
The Bible says you don't
Philistines,
get
he
to
loved
say what.
Ethiopians.
I already know what the fucking Bible says. Yitz, do you think there's any way on earth that I don't know what the Bible says?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend.
No. This isn't about offense. This is about trying to get an honest answer. I already told you, you don't get to tell me what it says in the Bible and act as if you answered my question. My question to begin with was, how do we know that what it says in the Bible is true at all? But you're saying that God chose other people. And I said, who did he choose and how do you know it? Because I think you're getting ready to say, I know it because the Bible says so. But that's just because the Bible says so. And that's useless until you establish that the Bible is true and accurate and that a God is likely or possible.
Well, I would just add, Matt and Elk, that the narrative of Tanakh can be vindicated through the fact that Judaism has adopted other ideas and customs from different cultures.
I'm
So, for
sorry, that's
example,
completely irrelevant to the question that I had. It's completely irrelevant to your humble brag that God picked the Jews because they had problems. It's completely irrelevant to your assertion about what God has said or what God has done. You're just telling me what you believe. What you believe is fine. I mean, I don't agree with it. I don't share it. But the important thing is, why do you believe it? And why should anybody else believe it? And if you don't have an answer for why we should believe it, why did you call?
Okay, well, it is my personal belief that we were chosen to be a light to the nations, but God does love the world.
Yitz, how the fuck can I sit here and point out that you're just telling me what you believe and what matters is why, and your fucking response to that is to say, well, what I personally believe is. So let me ask you another question. Are you stupid? Because I don't think you are. And I also don't think you're intentionally dishonest. But every time I ask you a question and point out, you're just telling me your personal opinion, I want to know why, you go back to, this is my personal opinion. So let me ask the question again. Why should we believe it?
Am I muted by chance? Can you hear me?
No, I asked you a question. I'm waiting for you to answer it. Why should we believe that your opinion is correct?
All right. Well, my essential argument was that Israel has been reestablished, and someone can choose to believe it or not. It's all right.
But you admitted, you've admitted, yeah, you've admitted that can be naturally explained. So you haven't given us a reason yet.
Let me try this. I'm going to unmute you, Yitz. Did you call in just to tell us what you believe and not give us a reason to agree with you?
Yeah. With all due respect, I believe I am giving a reason. But
Yitz, I fucking asked you a question. Would you answer that question? Fuck your respect. I'm trying to get to something useful. Did you call in to tell us what you believe and not actually give us a reason to share that belief? Yes or no?
Well, yes, I believe I gave the proof of it.
Wow, you can't even answer a yes or no question correctly.
Yes.
Because your actual answer is no, but you said, yes, I believe I gave that. And the question was, did you call in to just share your personal opinion? That would be a yes. But now you're saying you didn't. So what reason can you give me to share the view that your opinion about a God is correct?
the reestablishment of the status as well, which was extremely unlikely.
I already said, you already
2000
acknowledged to Eric that doesn't necessarily demonstrate a God. That is just you inferring that God is the likely cause. How did you determine that God is even possible, let alone the likely cause of this?
Okay, well, I'll give you this. I'll have to look through the text again to get it.
No, Yitz, listen to the fucking question. There's nothing about the texts. I feel like I'm arguing with a broken AI. How?
It might be.
What method did you use to determine that God is even possible? Go.
There's rabbinic writings that as well that could be reestablished in 1948 in the Middle Ages.
Yitz.
Which was on them calculated.
Yitz. How did you determine that God is even possible?
Well, it was my foundation. I grew up that
So
way.
you assumed without justification that God is possible, right?
I believe he exists.
I didn't ask you if you fucking believed he exists. I asked you what justification you had for whether it was possible. And you said you began there. So I'm asking you, are you saying you assume God exists without justification, or that God is possible without justification?
Well, Matt, if there was clear-cut evidence that God existed, I would assume you wouldn't be identifying as an atheist.
Yitz, please answer the fucking question you're asked and not the one you wish you had been asked. Did you begin by assuming without justification that God is possible? Yes or no?
I believe God exists. Does that answer your question?
I believe I'm going to ban
no.
your stupid fucking phone number because you will not answer the fucking question that I've asked you twice now. Now I retract it. You are intentionally dishonest. I didn't want to believe that, but whatever has happened to you, either from your religion or something else, has made it so that you will not answer the most basic questions that will expose your irrationality.
How would you
So I'm
answer
going
it?
to
How
shut
do
up.
you want me to answer
Stop
it?
talking and listen. I'm going to ask you this one final time. I asked, how do you know that God is possible? And you said, I began with that. Are you claiming that you concluded that God was possible without justification? Yes or no?
I answered yes.
You're a fucking liar. You didn't answer yes.
I thought I did.
If you answered yes, stop, Yitz. If you answered yes to my yes or no question, do you think I would have kept harping on it?
I believe, unfortunately, there was a miscommunication, probably on my part, and I apologize for
Yes.
that.
Okay. So let's try this again. Let's make sure we're on the same page, because if we're not, we can't continue. You assume that God is possible without justification, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you see a phenomenon, because you have assumed that God is possible, that allows you to consider that God is a potential explanation for that phenomenon, correct?
Absolutely.
Cool. And when you see things that are consistent with the God that you have assumed exists or possibly exists, that provides you with justification for how God is a likely explanation for a particular set of events, right?
Yes.
Cool. Congratulations, Yitz. Thank you for finally getting there. Because what you're saying is you don't have any reason to think that God is possible. But once you assume God is possible, it allows you to stick God in as not only possible, but likely explanation for things. Eric and I, and I'm reluctant to speak for both of us, but this time I think I'm safe in saying, Eric and I do not and will not begin with the assumption that God is possible or that God is impossible. God's possibility or impossibility must be demonstrated. And the problem with a logical argument that begins with a premise that is assumed and not demonstrable means that the conclusion of the argument is wholly unreliable. So when you begin by assuming that God is possible, you begin compiling your assumptions, none of which are justified. Because if there's not a God, you were wrong in your initial assumption. And what you did was you set aside all of the other potential explanations for a phenomenon and prioritized the one you assumed, which means you are the one fulfilling your own prophecy. You are predicting that God, if he exists, will show up in these ways, and these ways show up. So you're revising it to say, see, my assumption was correct. See, my initial assumption that God was possible was correct. No, it fucking wasn't. It was unjustified. And until you have a justification for it, everything that follows from it is, in legal terms, fruit from a poisonous tree.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yitz, look at it this way. All right. So I think I heard earlier you were born into this faith. You were born in a certain region of the world, and you were born into Judaism.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So imagine how that could have been otherwise. Your starting assumptions are based on chance, basically rolling the die. Where you were born was complete chance. You could have been born to a secular country where there's not many religious people. You could have been born in a country that's dominated by Islam, one dominated by Christianity. You happen to be born in one where Judaism is the dominant religion. So that's your first dice roll. Your second die roll is the type, the version of the Jewish God that you believe in. It could have been, I'm not overly familiar with Judaism, but I know there's different denominations and they have different ideas of God and what he does and what he requires and all that. So to start with, you've started with two dice rolls. Hold on. I understand, but I'm saying there's different versions of it. That's my point. Your starting position is based on the roll of the die and then another roll of the die. And what me and Matt are trying to say is that is a terrible position to start in. Because if I use that same logic, then my starting position is a very, very esoteric sect of Christianity. And I'm very sure that you would not agree with that God idea. But I can simply say, well, that's what I started with. That's my starting assumption. That doesn't convince you at all. That doesn't justify my position. It's just simply saying, well, I was born in, but chance happened to put me here, so I'm just going to accept this starting position. And I say that that's a terrible place to start. You should start as a blank slate with zero belief, examine the evidence, and then pick up belief as the evidence warrants and as the evidence justifies.
I think you would. Were you raised an atheist?
No, I was not.
Born an atheist?
No, I was not.
Well, born an atheist?
Well, what about? Yeah,
that was not.
Well, I mean, were you raised? I guess not.
I was not I was not born, quote unquote, born an atheist. I was raised in a Christian family. Mm-hmm. I don't think babies have no concept of belief, and babies have no idea about what is justified and what's not. When you're born, you're a blank slate. Unfortunately, humans are not entirely rational, and lots of parents push irrational beliefs onto their kids. And because of the way that humans are, it's a survival mechanism that children and toddlers trust their parents. This system is used by religions to get this irrational belief into kids, into the heads and minds of children, and then they grow up and perpetuate the cycle. But like I said, I don't think you would agree that my starting position as a Christian is valid. And if you understand that, then you'll understand why we look at your starting position and go, yeah, that's also not valid. It's a bad starting position.
Well, yes, I understand. I believe that all paths to God are authentic. So if had you remained a Christian, that would be fine with me.
What's your justification for believing that all paths to God? You're still beginning with assuming that a God is possible and that there are paths to God. Where's your demonstration that there is any possible God or a path to God?
Well, that's my belief. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. Eric, I wanted to ask you,
how is that useful? I don't care what you wanted to ask, Eric. I'm talking now. How is it useful for anybody to walk through life saying, that's what I believe. I don't care if it's true or not. Let me share it.
Well, I believe that religion, spirituality.
I didn't
comfort
ask you
one another.
what you believed about religion. This is so weird. You just keep telling me what you believe. Well, I keep asking why you believe it. So, you haven't
Well,
been
I'm a
able to
subjective
establish
being.
anything other than you assume there's a God, you assume there's a path to God. Let me ask you this, Yitz. Do you care if what you believe is true or not?
I hope it is. But if it's not, it's not.
Thank you. That is exactly the answer I would have predicted, like word for word, that you are this ambiguous, floating, non-committal. I was raised a Jew. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's true. Do you care whether or not it's true? Well, I hope it's true, but I'm not going to invest any fucking effort into understanding whether it's true. I'm not going to invest any fucking effort into figuring out how to tell the difference between truth, so that when I call into a show and people are asking me what methods I might be able to use to demonstrate truth, I'll just ignore them and keep restating what I believe, because genuinely, Yitz, you do not care sufficiently if your beliefs are true.
Well, I believe I cared enough that I was willing to call. Could you give me that by chance?
No, I don't think people who
Okay.
care if their beliefs are true are likely to call.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking my call. It's been a pleasure speaking with you both.
I doubt it, but thanks. All right. We are
Have a nice-
almost out
have
of
a nice
time.
day,
There's
Yitz.
there's only, what's that?
I said, have
Yeah.
a nice day, Yitz. So
I hope Yitz have a
say
nice
goodbye.
day. I mean, it's just, the point of the call is to give us the why. The what is almost irrelevant. We only have a couple minutes left until this show is going to automatically kick over. So, Stephanie, pronouns she, her from Arizona, is a pantheist. Want to know what is our critique of pantheism? Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm okay. By pantheism, I'm assuming you're talking about the notion that the universe and God are one and the same.
Yes.
Cool.
And that we each borrow our life energy, what we're using to live this life, from the everything that is God, which makes us actually part of God.
Yeah, I don't know what that means about borrowing energy, but I believe the universe exists. I don't know what use there is in calling the universe God. What does that get me?
Well, if you accept the idea that you are both a part of this energy and borrowing its life essence of energy to survive on this world, then you actually do have a responsibility to make that as
That's not what I
positive an
asked.
experience as it can.
That's not what I
I'm
asked.
sorry.
I don't know what calling the universe God gets me, because whether or not I'm borrowing energy from a universe or not, which I don't accept is the case, I don't know why that justifies calling the universe God. So when you call the universe God, to me, I'll be honest, we only got a minute or so left. Pantheism are atheists who are afraid to say they're atheists because they don't want to pretend, they don't want anybody to know that they reject a God concept. And so they're like, oh, the universe is God and we're all here together. And I agree the universe exists and that I am part of the universe and that there's matter and energy. How does that make it a God?
Right. Well, I think that using the word God as a communication tool to explain that there is more than just ourselves.
Then in that case, I think pantheism as used that way, and I'll stop here and let Eric wrap this up, but pantheism used that way is a waste of time cop-out that I have no need for and that doesn't impact me in any way.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the same page there, Stephanie. I think pantheism is mostly just a useless swapping of labels. Because I mean, I can maybe loosely, I can like loosely agree with you. Is like when you say borrowing energy, like, okay, well, there is energy in me. I'm not borrowing it. I'm part of the universe, and there is energy in the atoms of my body and all that stuff. And when I die, that stuff's taken, recycles and all that. It's kind of a pointless, useless swapping of labels. So that's kind of where I'm at.
My apologies, Stephanie. We just completely ran out of time. I apologize. And this is King Mail. We know it's you, Hakeem, calling back. You don't get to talk. Goodbye. On that note, we have completely run out of time. You guys are going to get automatically moved over. Calling it now. He's on with Austin Archer, unless I'm wrong. But just
I think he is.
Keep watching the credits. Scroll by.